Chapter 9:14. Li Yundong didn't want to have anything to do with the two groups of people from the Shang dynasty and the Zhou dynasty at all. Although he had shocked everyone present, he didn't look complacent at all. He smiled slightly, put his palms together, and said in a clear voice, "Amitba, I'm just passing by and will leave soon. Please help yourselves." Although the situation was dangerous and unpredictable, his words almost made Su Chan laugh. Zhou Qin, Ruan Hongling, and the others couldn't help but giggle. Ruan Hongling said in a low voice, "Bah, this guy is not serious again. What kind of monk is he?" It was around 1100 BC, 500 or 600 years before the birth of Sakyamuni Buddha. In other words, he had to wait for the Western sect's leader, Taoist Jiayin, to abandon Taoism and become a Buddhist. He would then lead Sakyamuni Buddha into Buddhism and worship him as the Lord. He would then transform from Taoist Jiayin into Amitba Buddha. At this time, there was only the Ren school, the Jia school, and the Chan school. There was no trace of Buddhism. Li Yundong's actions made the cultivators of the Chan school and the Jia school not recognize any of them. Although they felt that it was strange, they didn't think that there was anything wrong. They all stared at Li Yundong with great vigilance, for fear that if he pounced on them at this time, the other party would take advantage of the situation. If that happened, the consequences would be unimaginable. Li Yundong glanced around and saw that he had successfully shocked the other party. He smiled and stepped back step by step without turning around. As he walked, he said in a low voice, "Are you all stupid? Hurry up and go." Only then did Su Chan, Zhou Qin, and the others wake up as if they had just woken up from a dream. They hurriedly turned around and got into the alley where they had come from. Li Yundong watched the scene vigilantly as he slowly retreated. After a few steps, his figure finally disappeared into the darkness. As soon as he sneaked into the darkness, he let out a long breath. His back was sweating profusely, and he was sweating profusely. Seeing him like this, Zhou Qin couldn't help asking curiously, "Master, didn't I see that you were very powerful just now?" Li Yundong turned his head and glared at her. "Nonsense, these guys are just pawns. I'm not afraid of them, but what if they get angry and call out the big guy behind them? What should I do then?" Zhou Qin asked curiously, "Big guy?" Just as she said that, there was a rumble in Deer Terrace Square. A pillar of light shot up into the sky. When it reached the sky, it split into 7 different colors that spread in all directions. The colorful light extended all the way to the distant horizon. This movement was so loud that Li Yundong and the others looked up at the sky. After the 7 rays of light scattered in all directions, countless cracks suddenly appeared in the thick dark clouds in the sky. An old man riding a deer slowly walked out of it. After a while, a man riding a crane appeared behind him. As soon as Li Yundong saw this, he turned to Zhou Qin and said, "Did you see that? The big one is coming. A golden immortal has appeared." Su Chan was fascinated by the scene. She took his arm and asked, "Yundong, who are these people? Which one are you talking about?" Just as Su Chan was about to point to the sky, she saw more golden immortals appear one after another behind the 2 of them. Some of these people had robes that fluttered in the wind, while others had long sleeves that danced in the wind. Some of them had a youthful complexion, while some were handsome men. Some of them had strange appearances, while others had beautiful appearances. There were all kinds of men and women, and most of them were riding on rare and exotic beasts. There were deer, cows, cranes, tigers, Pai Xiu, Xia Ji, Bai Zai, Bai, and many others. The person in the lead was riding on a David's deer. His clothes were as white as snow, and even his eyebrows were white. These golden immortals appeared one after another. There were probably 20 or 30 of them. Su Chan's eyes widened. Li Yundong also looked at Su Chan speechlessly and said, "Can you still be sure who you are asking?" Su Chan laughed dryly and said, "How can there be so many golden immortals?" Li Yundong sighed. "It's really a cloud-piercing arrow, thousands of troops and horses come to meet." The 12 disciples of Heavenly Lord Yuanshi are all top experts among the Golden Immortals. I'll be there soon. Zhou Qin looked terrified and said, Master, we'd better leave quickly. Don't get involved in their affairs. Ruan Hongling also looked up at the Golden Immortal Masters in the sky. She said, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 23, 24, oh my God. 24 Golden Immortals. There are so many Golden Immortals. If I go back and tell my Shiji that I've seen so many Golden Immortal Masters, won't she envy me to death? Li Yundong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He glared at her and said, we'll talk about it when you get back. At this time, Ruan Hongling decided to go all out. She turned to Lin Miao and said, it's a pity that you don't have your mobile phone with you. Otherwise, you could take a photo and post it on the internet. After the fall of the Shang dynasty, Haotian the Great had gathered enough people, established the Heavenly Palace, and officially regulated the Heaven Realm. He had stipulated that immortals were not allowed to descend to the mortal world. If any immortals who descended to the mortal world were caught, they would be severely punished. Therefore, it was a big deal to see a golden immortal in the mortal world. Moreover, once a cultivator reached the golden immortal realm, he would soon be summoned by the Heaven Realm to ascend. If there was a golden immortal who was unwilling to ascend, the Heaven Realm would send someone down to destroy the body of the golden immortal and forcibly take him up. In short, it was almost impossible to see a golden immortal in modern society. The probability was even smaller than winning the lottery 10 times in a row. Even if they saw one, they would probably ascend in the blink of an eye. Seeing 24 golden immortals in one go like Ruan Hongling and the others was really unprecedented since the end of the Shang dynasty. Li Yundong looked at Ruan Hongling speechlessly, feeling a headache coming on. He really didn't understand. How could a calm and elegant person like Zi Yuan have such a lively junior sister like Ruan Hongling? At this time, Lin Miao also raised her head, her mouth wide open, almost able to fit her fist. She felt as if she was in a dream and did not reply to Ruan Hongling for a long time. Li Yundong looked at the many golden immortals in the sky and said, with so many masters pressing down together, even a mountain will be crushed into powder. It seems that even God will perish, and the Western Zhou dynasty will prosper. As he spoke, he suddenly heard an angry snort from the Deer Terrace platform. A figure flew straight into the sky toward the 24 golden immortals. Although it was night, there were colorful lights in the sky at this time, and the fire on the ground was burning the city. The fire soared into the sky, but this person's figure was clearly illuminated. Li Yundong and the others took a closer look and saw that the man was extremely burly, about 2 meters tall. He was wearing a cloak and a golden crown on his head. His face couldn't be seen clearly in the night, but Li Yundong and the others could feel an extremely domineering and majestic aura coming from this man. It was like a flaming volcano, and they could feel a blazing aura coming from him even from a great distance. Zhou Qin only felt that this person's aura was strong, and it was actually comparable to the power that Li Yundong had shown when he had fought against hundreds of Thunder Retribution Masters. She was suddenly shocked and blurted out, "Who is this person? He's so powerful. Why do I feel that this person's aura is even stronger than those golden immortals?" Li Yundong's face was solemn as he said in a low voice, "I don't know, but he is indeed a strong opponent." As soon as he finished speaking, the old man in the middle said in a clear voice, "King Zhou, you have been Shengtang for 400 years, and the destiny of the country has come to an end. Why don't you give up early, lest the people be plunged into misery and suffering?" "This person is King Zhou?" Li Yundong and the others exclaimed in horror. At this time, King Zhou, who was facing more than 20 golden immortals alone in midair, still remained calm. He shouted angrily, "Old thief LV Shang, do you dare to fight with me alone?" "LV Shang?" Su Chan blinked her eyes and said in surprise, "Jiang Zia? This is Jiang Zia. No way." While they were shouting, Jiang Zia stroked his beard and said slowly, "King Zhou, although you are brave, can you defeat the hearts of the people in the world?" King Zhou laughed wildly and said, I am the hearts of the people, and I am the will of heaven. After that, he rushed toward these golden immortals without saying a word. Li Yundong and the others saw that King Zhou was incredibly brave and powerful. He rushed into the formation of 24 golden immortals alone and punched and kicked them as if there was no one there. These golden immortals shouted angrily, but no one dared to face the power of King Zhou alone. Zhou Qin, Wan Hongling, and the others were stunned and speechless for a long time. Su Chan was so shocked that she stammered, "Is King Zhou so powerful? He fought against 24 golden immortals alone?" Li Yundong frowned slightly and looked at the sky. He looked carefully for a while and suddenly shook his head. "It's not like that. Look carefully, these golden immortals seem to have their own plans. No one is willing to fight against King Zhou head-on. They all seem to be deliberately preserving their strength. King Zhou fights this one, but he doesn't save that one. King Zhou fights that one, but he doesn't save that one either. These guys are so disunited. No wonder they can't beat King Zhou." Zhou Qin was shocked and said, "But even so, it's too exaggerated. 24 golden immortals." Li Yundong nodded slightly. "King Zhou is indeed powerful, but I don't know who is more powerful compared with the mystical silver fox in her heyday." At this time, Wan Hongling's eyes lit up, and her previous thoughts were rekindled. "By the way, King Zhou has come out at this time. The Deer Terrace Pavilion must be empty, right? If we don't sneak in now, when will we?" Li Yundong was stunned. He quickly glanced at the sky and nodded slightly. "Yes, this is indeed a good opportunity. I think these immortals are busy fighting and shouldn't notice us. Come on, let's go to the Deer Terrace Pavilion." Wan Hongling was overjoyed. Zhou Qin and Su Chan also nodded quickly and followed Li Yundong carefully. The group of people quickly walked toward the Deer Terrace Pavilion. This paragraph will not be too long. In addition, it will soon be the last chapter of the book. Some readers always ask me if the ending is good or bad. Tang tang, I repeat it here. Of course, the ending is good. Please rest assured. Chapter 9:15. At this time, Zhaoga City was even more chaotic than before. The Deer Terrace Square was in a mess. The huge bronze tripod, which had stood upright, had also fallen to the side. Blood flowed like a river on the ground. Many cultivators on both sides of the Shang and Zhou dynasties were lying in pools of blood. Most of them had died miserably. They fell to the ground in disorder, and the ground was almost invisible. Li Yundong and the others had a problem walking, but they didn't dare to fly for fear of attracting the attention of others. They had to use the cover of the sky-stretching female seal while carefully moving forward in the sea of corpses and blood. Su Chan had seen more dead people along the way than many people had seen in several lifetimes. Along the way, Su Chan had seen more dead people than many people had seen in several lifetimes combined. She was a little scared and hid behind Li Yunyang. Zhou Qin also slightly covered her nose, unable to stand the soaring smell of blood. Lin Miao saw Wan Hongling walking while forming a palm with one hand and muttering to herself, so she followed suit and imitated her. The few of them walked slowly along the way. From time to time, there would be a few people fighting beside them, but they did not dare to make a sound. This war between the Shang and Zhou dynasties was not only a war between two dynasties, but it was also a battle between two major cultivation groups and two major sects in the Chinese cultivation world. Li Yundong knew that in this war of God's investiture, except for ancestor Hong Jun, the great ancestors of the three pure ones, the Guide Taoist, and the Kundi Taoist, who were extremely respected top experts, would all take part in the battle and fight until the sky was dark. Although the patriarchs of the three pure ones had yet to show themselves, and the treacherous patriarch Subhuti, the Taoist of guidance, had been hiding in the dark and watching all this, it was hard to say when sect leader Tong Tian would be able to fight the four overgods, Taishang Laozi, Yuanzhi Tianzuan, patriarch Subhuti, and Amitba all by himself. Li Yundong was now very embarrassed. As an outsider, he had followed the mystical silver fox to the most brilliant era in the Chinese cultivation world. Although Li Yundong knew that the Western Zhou with the support of the clan of Chanism would eventually win, he did not dare to turn to the Western Zhou. Not to mention whether King Wu or Jiang Shang would be willing to ally with him, the enemies of the Western Zhou were a bit terrifying. Needless to say, King Zhou had left an evil poem on the stone pillar of Goddess Wa's palace. Goddess Wa did not dare to deal with him by herself, and sect leader Tong Tian was even more abnormal. At the same time, he fought with Taishang Lao Jun, Yuanshi Tianzuan, Ancestor Bodhi, and Amitba. Although he was defeated in the end, he did not die. Even in anger, he tried to use the immortal killing sword diagram to refine the 4 elements of wind, water, wood, and earth, to open a new world and fight with the Chan school again. If sect leader Hong Jun had not seen the signs of chaos in the Chinese world and brought sect leader Tong Tian to the Purple Palace, the history of China would not have been written like this in the future. Taishang Lao Jun, Yuanshi Tianzuan, Patriarch Puti, and Amitba. These 4 major gods were worshipped by a sect no matter where they were placed. However, sect leader Tong Tian was able to dominate all 4 of them by himself. His strength was truly unimaginable. Li Yundong was confident in his skills, but he did not dare to be conceited and arrogant to think that he could fight with sect leader Tong Tian while protecting their safety with Wan Hongling and Lin Miao, 2 burdens. This was simply a fool's dream. However, if he thought that he could successfully attack Zhao Gadir Terrace by hitching a ride with the Western Zhou dynasty, it would be even more unreliable. He was afraid that when the time came, sect leader Tong Tian would fly into a rage and release the immortal slaying sword formation to attack him. That would be terrible. If a master like Yuanshi Tianzuan entered the immortal slaying sword formation alone, he would also be turned into ashes. If he entered the formation, he would not even have ashes left. As for helping King Zhou to fight against the Zhou dynasty, it was even more unreliable. It was not only going against the current, but also against the natural order. At the very least, even if he helped sect leader Tong Tian defeat the honored Lord of the Origin, what if he provoked the old ancestor Hong Jun? The reason why Yuanshi Tianzuan, Taishang Lao Jun, and the others could become like soup for 400 years and could defeat sect leader Tong Tian was that ancestor Hong Jun turned a blind eye to their indulgence. Because sect leader Tong Tian's power and strength had seriously threatened ancestor Hong Jun. That was why Yuanshi Tianzuan and the others dared to go down to the human world to find trouble with the people of the Jie school. In the final analysis, whether it was Cheng Tang or Ji Zhou, they could not help either. Either side would face a great disaster. As for helping others and enforcing justice on behalf of heaven, immeasurable longevity and blessings, it was better to forget about this kind of thing. It was better for them to die than for themselves. Everyone, take your time to fight. I will not help either side. Everyone, each for your own master, mind your own business. With this idea in mind, even if there were people around Li Yundong and the others who were beaten to a pulp, with their heads chopped off and their arms and legs flying in all directions, they could only pretend that they did not see it. They stared blankly all the way and hurried with all their might. It was a distance of several kilometers from the west side of the square to the east side. With the cultivation of Li Yundong and the others, they could really reach it in a few leaps. However, at this time, the road was full of potholes, and they stumbled along. It felt like they had walked for centuries. When they finally arrived at the foot of the Deer Terrace Pavilion, the side was finally empty. There was no longer a thick layer of corpses under their feet, but a hard bluestone staircase. Even though Li Yundong's cultivation was high, he could not help but feel a chill down his spine when he stepped into the mountain of corpses and the sea of blood. There was a terrifying massacre in front of him, and his ears were full of wailing and killing. Li Yundong looked back at Su Chan and the others, only to see that they were all pale, as if they had just rolled in hell. He did not have time to comfort the little girl, so he pulled her and continued forward. When they got up the stairs, they saw a towering, majestic palace standing in front of them. The first thing they saw was a row of huge stone pillars. Each of these stone pillars was 40 to 50 meters high, and it would take more than a dozen adult men to wrap their arms around them. The stone pillars were either carved with beautiful goddesses or charming flying fairies. Standing under these stone pillars, Li Yundong, who was tall, was really as small as an ant. When he looked up, he could hardly see the top of the palace. Li Yundong looked at it and sighed, saying, although there must have been the help of cultivators, how much manpower and material resources would it have taken to build such a magnificent and exquisite palace? At this time, Su Chan, Zhou Qin, and the others also looked up at the magnificent palace. They were so shocked that they could not speak. Zhou Qin shook her head and said, even without Daji, I'm afraid that after this palace was built, King Zhou's country would not be stable. Li Yundong smiled and said, without Daji, I'm afraid that King Zhou might not have built this palace. After sighing for a while, they walked along the huge and deep palace corridors. Along the way, they saw screens and painted walls that stretched on endlessly. Everywhere were colorful paintings and unique divine statues. As Li Yundong and the others walked, they admired the flowers. But when they reached the inside of the palace, they saw that the extremely spacious and huge palace was filled with smoke, as if there was a fairy aura. Although there was an earth-shattering battle outside and a river of blood, this place was still mysterious and ethereal, like a fairyland. Li Yundong and the others looked up and saw that there were beautiful murals on the palace. There were many fairies and gods painted on them. They were full of color and lifelike. On the ground, there was a huge pool. In the pool, there were 4 white carvings of the 4 divine beasts, azure dragon, vermilion bird, black tortoise, and white tiger. These 4 divine beasts opened their mouths and spat out a steady stream of hot water. The hot water gathered in the pool and evaporated into a mist, enveloping everything in the palace, making it look mysterious and deep. Before Li Yundong had time to enjoy the wonderful scenery in the palace, he suddenly found that the sky goddess seal shrouding them had suddenly disappeared, and in an instant, their figures appeared in the palace. Li Yundong was stunned and suddenly felt that the palace was filled with an inexplicable great power. He immediately turned to Su Chan and Zhou Qin and said, something is wrong here. Let's get out. As soon as his voice fell, he heard a faint voice suddenly ring out in the palace. Since you're here, why are you in such a hurry to leave? Do you think that my Jade Lake is a place where you can come and go as you please? The voice exuded a sense of decadence. The soft and charming voice was enough to melt the iron bones of any man of iron into molten iron. Li Yundong only heard one sentence, but he felt as if there was a strange fragrance around him. His whole body became soft and he could not summon any strength. His heart trembled, his hands quickly pinched a finger, and he said in a deep voice, "Who is it?" The voice said faintly, "I should be the one asking who you are. In this world, there is actually someone who doesn't know me?" While speaking, the mist in the jade pool of the palace twisted and rotated violently, slowly converging into the shape of a white fox. The white fox was lifelike, with 9 tails floating in the air behind it, circling around Li Yundong and the others. Li Yundong was shocked and vigilant. He said word by word, "Su Daiji." "Ha ha ha." Su Daiji giggled. "It seems that you still know me." Zhou Qin, Su Chan, and the others were nervous and curious at this time. They opened their eyes wide and looked at the mist, as if they wanted to see the real body of Su Daiji through the heavy mist, to see what this 1,000-year-old witch looked like. Li Yundong saw the mist around him twisting and rolling, sometimes turning into a 9-tailed celestial fox running and jumping, and sometimes into a charming woman, teasing and seducing. His 10 fingers flew, both hands made Vajra fists, the left index finger straight, and the right little finger wrapped around the first joint of the left index finger, while the left index finger supported the first joint of the right thumb. It was the wisdom fist seal of Vairocana's Bodhi Guidance first wisdom seal, which could destroy the nameless darkness. As soon as Li Yundong made this Mahamudra, the constantly changing mist around him suddenly dispersed in all directions. Like a strong wind, the mist in the palace was swept clean, revealing the deep inner hall. Su Daiji's voice was slightly surprised. "You're very powerful. It seems that you are also here to kill me." Were you sent by King Wu? Oh, you men are heartless, incorruptible, and shameless. After using me, you kicked me away. Not only did you betray me, but you also poured dirty water on me. Alas, this 400-year-old empire is destined to be buried in the hands of the Chanism. What does this have to do with me? Su Daji said faintly. Her voice was full of grievance, as if a pitiful resentful woman was quietly complaining about her grievances in her boudoir. Although Li Yundong could not see her face, his heart was hooked and his sympathy was greatly aroused. He wished that he could go through water and tread on fire for her. Li Yundong exclaimed in his heart, no wonder such a wise and powerful person like King Zhou would be fascinated by her. I can't see her, but my Taoist heart is almost shaken just by hearing her voice. What if I see her in person? Amazing, really amazing. Li Yundong calmed down and said, Su Daiji, we are not Qing Tang, nor are we from Western Zhou. Su Daiji said in surprise, you are not from King Wu's side? Nor are you from my king's side? Then. As she said this, her voice became cold. Could it be that you are the person sent by Her Majesty to kill me? As she said this, her voice suddenly became incomparably fierce. Well, since she is heartless, then don't blame me for being heartless. As soon as Su Daiji's voice fell, a figure rushed out from the depths of the palace like lightning. 9 white fox tails fiercely attacked Li Yundong. These few days are going to be very busy. I have to go to Beijing for business next week, so the updates will probably be slow. However, I will promise to update continuously. I can only update once today. I apologize to everyone. Chapter 9:16. Li Yundong saw the 9 white fox tails at a glance and was slightly stunned. He thought to himself, why are they not golden fox tails, but white? He didn't have time to think too much. He pinched his fingers and slapped forward with a Mahamudra. With a buzzing sound, the 9 white fox tails rushed over angrily and hit Li Yundong's golden Mahamudra. It was as if they had hit a hard rock wall angrily. In an instant, they turned into countless broken flowers and scattered everywhere. They were completely vulnerable. Su Daiji was shocked. She hadn't expected that the opponent she had met would be so powerful. Her voice trembled slightly with fear and shock. Who are you? How can you be so powerful? Li Yundong also felt strange in his heart. He knew that if she was really at the level of a 9-tailed celestial fox like the mystical silver fox, there was no reason for her to be defeated in a fight with him. But after thinking for a while, Li Yundong suddenly understood. It was true that Su Daiji was a 9-tailed celestial fox, but it was not necessarily true how powerful she was in fighting, how high her cultivation was, and how fierce she was in PK. If she was really so powerful, why did she have to take such a big detour to deal with King Zhou according to Goddess Wu's idea? Why didn't she just go straight into the palace? Although the end of the Shang dynasty marked the end of the most dazzling, mysterious historical period of the Chinese cultivation world, with the rise of Taoism, Buddhism, and other cultivation sects, many new cultivation methods and spells were developed. This also made the level of cultivation in the world of cultivation continue to advance, and there was no regression due to the huge gap in the middle. Especially at the end of the Tang dynasty, the mystical silver fox appeared out of nowhere. For the first time, she perfectly combined the cultivation methods and magic of Buddhism and Taoism. She became the first cultivator in the history of Chinese cultivation to cultivate both Buddhism and Taoism and reach the highest level. She was more than 600 years earlier than Wu Shouyang, the founder of the Wu Lu sect of the immortal and Buddhist sects in the Middle and Late Ming dynasty. If she didn't use powerful magical weapons, the mystical silver fox's fighting strength in her heyday was not inferior to that of the 3 pure ones. Li Yundong had fought fiercely with the mystical silver fox and learned her power. Naturally, he thought that Su Daiji was as powerful as her. He even vaguely felt that Su Daiji was even more powerful than the mystical silver fox. But when he came into contact with her, he realized that it was not the case at all. Su Daiji was not weak, but she was the same as the cultivators of this era. She had the same drawback and weakness. If his inner core was not condensed, his golden body would not be sturdy. Due to this era being the age of chaos, deities were everywhere. Even a legendary figure like ancestor Hong Jun frequently roamed the mortal world, let alone the three clear ones and the other deities. Most of the magic treasures in the hands of these immortals were extremely domineering. Whether it was the Xianyuan sword, the 4 immortal killing swords, the flipping sky seal, or the 9 dragons fire shield, they were all terrifying magic treasures that could kill masters at the golden immortal level in seconds. When the mystical silver fox encountered them, she could only run away. Therefore, the number of spells created by the cultivators of this era was far less than that of the later generations. Therefore, in PK fights, it mostly depended on whose magical weapon was more powerful. Therefore, they did not pay much attention to their own personal cultivation. The most famous example was the founder of the soy sauce party in China, the strongest leader of the soy sauce party in history, Immortal Huang Long. Immortal Huang Long was the second disciple of the honored Lord of the Origin, only below Guang Qingzi, the teacher of the Yellow Emperor Xianyuan. However, because of his poor background, he was despised by the honored Lord of the Origin, who valued him very much. However, he was also a disciple of the honored Lord of the Origin by ancestor Hong Jun, so he did not get a magic treasure from the honored Lord of the Origin. He had the cultivation of a golden immortal, but he was empty-handed and did not have a single Dharma treasure. Therefore, in the Great War of the Gods, Huang Longjunren suffered a crushing defeat in every battle and was chased by others until he had to flee in a sorry state. It could be said that he was defeated again and again and again. He was a complete weakling. In terms of cultivation, Su Daiji was not necessarily as high as immortal Huang Long. She was also the personal concubine of King Zhou, so it was naturally impossible for her to have a magic treasure with her. Therefore, when she fought with Li Yundong, she was immediately defeated. This defeat made her feel frightened and uneasy. It was the first time that she had met such a powerful cultivator with bare hands. The idea of killing Li Yundong and the others was immediately dispelled. She didn't even have the mood to say anything harsh. She turned around and wanted to escape. But just as she was about to escape, a figure flashed out from the side in an instant. 7 golden foxtails attacked Su Daiji like lightning and thunder. Su Daiji was shocked. She had never dreamed that someone of her kind would attack her here. Just as she was about to be tightly entangled by the 7 golden foxtails, Li Yundong and Su Chan shouted at the same time, "Mystical silver fox." In an instant, 9 foxtails appeared behind Su Chan. 7 of them spread on the ground like a waterfall, like a thick layer of white velvet carpet. The other 2 quickly pounced on the mystical silver fox like spiritual snakes. Li Yundong had been vigilant against the appearance of the mystical silver fox. As soon as he saw the 7 golden foxtails, he immediately slapped them without hesitation. As soon as the mystical silver fox came into contact with Li Yundong's Mahamudra, there was a loud bang, and her figure appeared in an instant. At this time, the mystical silver fox didn't have a cauldron as her body, but her yang spirit was outside. Although Li Yundong's cultivation was lower than that of the mystical silver fox before, he had obtained the power of Wisdom King. Therefore, when he came into contact with the mystical silver fox without a cauldron as her body, they were on par with each other. As soon as the figure of the mystical silver fox appeared, she immediately flashed and hid in the midst of the palace. She shouted sternly, "Immovable Wisdom King, won't you give me a way to live?" Li Yundong snorted angrily, "Give me back Chao Kefi's soul and divine sense, and I'll let you go." The mystical silver fox said angrily, "Bullsh *T, she is my life. She is me, and I am her. Why should I give it back to you?" Li Yundong said angrily, "She already has her own life and life. You can't impose your fate on her. Even if you get all her souls back, so what?" The 2 of them moved quickly in this huge palace. Their figures were extremely fast, and they almost separated as soon as they touched each other. 1 second, they were fighting beside the pool on the east side of the palace, and the next second, they appeared on the west side of the palace. At this time, Su Daiji was completely confused. She didn't know the origin of Li Yundong, and she didn't understand the origin of the mystical silver fox either. In particular, the mystical silver fox and Su Chan were both fox demons. Why did they appear here? How could they be so powerful? When did fox demons become so powerful? Su Daiji was a little confused, but she soon realized that this was not the place to stay for a long time. She gritted her teeth and turned around to escape. The mystical silver fox had been lurking in this palace. Before, because of the existence of King Zhou, she did not dare to act rashly. It was not easy for her to wait for King Zhou to leave before she dared to move around to look for Su Daiji. When she finally found it and was ready to make a move, Li Yundong, the enemy who had been haunting her, came out again. The mystical silver fox was so angry that her teeth itched. If anger could kill people, Li Yundong would have been killed by her hundreds of times. While dealing with Li Yundong, the mystical silver fox paid attention to Su Daiji's movements. When she saw that Su Daiji was going to escape, she would not let go of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. She immediately rushed towards Su Daiji. She moved like lightning, and in the blink of an eye, she pounced on Su Daiji's back. She stretched out her hand and slapped down on the top of Su Daiji's head. Li Yundong's reaction was also very fast. In the blink of an eye, he appeared behind the mystical silver fox and slapped down on her back. If the mystical silver fox didn't stop to block this attack, she would immediately be slapped by Li Yundong to the point that her yang spirit would scatter and she would suffer a great loss. However, the mystical silver fox was the mystical silver fox after all. Her 7 fox tails appeared in an instant and swept toward Li Yundong. Su Chan was shocked and immediately controlled her 2 golden fox tails to block in front of Li Yundong. With Su Chan's protection, Li Yundong had no worries. He slapped at the mystical silver fox and shouted angrily, "Surrender, mystical silver fox. You can't win." The mystical silver fox turned around quickly and glanced at Su Chan with hatred. A flash of lightning flashed in her eyes. When her palms touched Li Yundong, her body immediately shook and she was blasted up horizontally. In a moment, she made a big hole in the palace, and her body also flew out. Although the mystical silver fox's body was blasted away, her 7 fox tails were extremely wide and long. With a roll of her fox tails, she wrapped Li Yundong, Su Daiji, and Su Chan in it and pulled them out. Li Yundong and the others were caught off guard and were pulled out of the Deer Terrace Pavilion Palace. At this time, a green light flashed. It was Zhou Qin who finally seized the opportunity to control the Qiyue and fiercely slashed at the mystical silver fox. Although she couldn't hurt the mystical silver fox, this sneak attack distracted the mystical silver fox a lot. Li Yundong took the opportunity to shout loudly, and all the Jinqi in his body burst out. He shook his body and turned into the real body of Wisdom King with 3 heads and 6 arms. His 6 arms pulled one of the mystical silver fox's fox tails, threw her hard, and threw her back into the palace. However, the remaining tail of the mystical silver fox twisted in the air and was tightly entangled with Su Chan's golden fox tail. In a moment, Su Chan and her fell into the palace again. Li Yundong was shocked and shouted, "Chan'er." Just as he was about to fly back to the palace, he suddenly heard a loud bang in the sky, as if the primordial chaos had just begun. Thunder exploded, and countless golden lights shot straight toward the Deer Terrace Pavilion Palace, enveloping it in an instant. Li Yundong's powerful cultivation was pushed away and bounced aside when he came into contact with the golden light. Zhou Qin, Ruan Hongling, and Lin Miao were also shaken out of the wall. Fortunately, Ruan Hongling reacted quickly and wrapped herself and Lin Miao with her powerful magical weapon, the red caltrip handkerchief. When they were blasted out of the hall, they were not injured. However, there was no news from the mystical silver fox and Su Chan in the palace. Not only were they not ejected, but they could not move. As soon as they landed on the ground, they saw countless golden lights around them, like countless thin vines, firmly binding them. The more they struggled, the tighter the binding became. Su Daiji, who was in midair, was almost entangled by the golden light. However, when Li Yundong threw the mystical silver fox down the palace, she took the opportunity to escape and ran wildly into the distance. Only then did she escape. At this time, when she saw the abnormality, she looked back and was so shocked that her face changed dramatically. She said in a trembling voice, "Goddess, you are so cruel. You set up this magic circle that is specially designed to restrain us fox demons. Could it be that you want to silence me before you can be at ease?" Although Li Yundong was far away from her, he heard her words clearly. His face changed, and he immediately flew towards Su Daiji and shouted, "What did you say?" Chapter 9:17. Su Daiji had fought with Li Yundong before, and she had collapsed at the first touch. She was really scared by Li Yundong. When she saw Li Yundong flying over, she was so shocked that her face turned pale. "Don't come over." After that, she turned around and ran away. Seeing that she was about to escape, Li Yundong was very anxious, but he was worried about Su Chan's safety, so he didn't dare to chase after her. He gritted his teeth, held the Akalanatha seal in his hand, and rushed into the golden light formation. His body was like a cannonball, and he hit the golden light. There was a buzzing sound, and the golden light shot out in all directions, but Li Yundong was bounced out in an instant. Li Yundong was shocked. He looked at Su Chan, who was struggling in pain in the magic formation, and his heart was burning with anxiety. He gritted his teeth, turned his head, and shouted at Zhou Qin, "Hurry up and find a place to hide. I'm going to catch Daji and ask her." As soon as Li Yundong finished speaking, he pounced on Su Daiji like lightning. Although Su Daiji fled first, she was caught up by Li Yundong before she could fly far. She saw that there was no way to escape, and King Zhou was tightly entangled by the 24 golden immortals, who were scattered to save her. She immediately flew to the ground, wanting to turn into a little fox and escape. How could Li Yundong allow her to escape? With a loud shout, he put his hands together and slammed them on the ground. Su Daiji only felt a huge force enveloping her body, making her unable to move. It was as if she was carrying Mount Tai on her back. Not to mention wanting to change, it was impossible for her to even have a little bit of luck. Su Daiji fell to the ground with a howl, lying in the dusty woodland. She turned her head and looked at Li Yundong, who was quickly approaching with a murderous look in her eyes. She couldn't help laughing miserably. She looked up at the sky and shouted, "Goddess, you are so cruel." Su Daiji cried out. At this time, Li Yundong had already caught up with her. Li Yundong saw that Daji had her back to him. She was wearing a long red dress, and her figure was graceful. The feet that were exposed outside the dress were as white as jade, especially her 10 small fingernails, which were smeared with cardamom and cinnabar, which made her look indescribably romantic. However, Li Yundong didn't have time to appreciate the beauty of this generation of enchantress. He turned his hand and slapped the top of Su Daiji's head. "Tell me, what kind of magic formation is that? What was so mysterious about it? How do we break it?" His palm hovered an inch away from the top of Su Daiji's head. As long as he patted down a little more, this enchantress of this generation would die in his hands. Su Daiji turned around at this moment. Her eyes were filled with tears, and her face was sad. All right. I didn't expect that I would die in your hands today." She raised her neck and closed her eyes. "Come on, kill me." Only then did Li Yundong see Su Daiji's appearance clearly. He saw that Su Daiji had a small oval face and charming eyebrows. Although her eyes were closed, the slightly upturned corners of her eyes made her look like there was infinite charm hidden between her eyebrows. Li Yundong was shocked, not because of how shockingly beautiful Su Daiji was, but because the enchantress in front of him looked exactly like Su Chan. Li Yundong looked at Su Daiji with his mouth agape, as if he couldn't believe his eyes. He stammered, how could you? Su Daiji closed her eyes and waited for a while. Seeing that there was no movement, she opened her eyes and saw Li Yundong looking at her in shock. She couldn't help but sneer disdainfully in her heart, but her face revealed a charming and seductive expression. Are you reluctant to kill me? I know, all the men in the world are like you when they see me. Li Yundong was furious. He raised his palm and slapped Su Daiji again. The shocking wind from the palm hit Su Daiji's cheek, causing her to scream in pain. She covered her cheek and fell to the ground. Li Yundong shouted angrily, "Tell me, what kind of magic formation is this and how to break it?" Su Daiji was so scared that her heart was pounding. She didn't dare to tease Li Yundong anymore. She said in a trembling voice, "This is the heavenly demon subduing formation created by goddess Nuwa. It is used to restrain our demon fox clan. Back then, the goddess told me that if I didn't follow her instructions, she would use this magic formation to take me in." As she said this, tears welled up in her eyes. But now that I have followed her instructions, she still wants to take me in. Why are all of you like this? Why do you all want me to die? What did I do wrong? Why does Cheng Tang want to destroy the country that he has built for 400 years? Why does he want to blame me for this? Everyone in the world knows that this is the idea of the goddess, Patriarch Subhuti, and Patriarch Hong Jun. Su Daiji was a peerless beauty. No matter how she ranked the world's beauties, no matter what aesthetic standards she used, she would definitely be ranked in the top 5. A woman's tears were the most powerful weapon for a man. Even an Iron Man would be soft-hearted when she cried and complained about something, let alone a man like Li Yundong who had tender feelings for women. Li Yundong's face was cold, and his tone softened a little. He said in a deep voice, "I only ask you, how can we break this magic formation?" Su Daiji said sadly, "Who in the world can break the magic formation set up by the goddess herself?" Li Yundong's face suddenly turned pale. His body swayed and he said in a trembling voice, "Impossible, there must be a way." Su Daiji shook her head and cried sadly. If the goddess wants someone to die, no one can escape this calamity. Although the goddess is not very good at fighting, her scheming methods and magic formations are unparalleled in the world. You can't beat her. You'd better kill me. Li Yundong raised his hand and looked at the beautiful woman in front of him, who looked as charming as Su Chan, looking at him with tears in her eyes. In an instant, Su Chan's voice and smile appeared in front of him. Although his heart was burning with anxiety, how could he do it? He closed his eyes in pain, waved his hand, and said in a trembling voice, "You can go." Su Daiji's eyes widened, and she could hardly believe her ears. What? You're willing to let me go? Aren't you afraid that the goddess will make trouble for you? Li Yundong smiled bitterly. She will make trouble for me? If anything happens to my Choner, I will kill my way into her palace, burn it down, and kill her to avenge my Choner. Su Daiji's pretty face turned pale when she heard this. She looked at Li Yundong up and down seriously. For the first time, she looked at the man in front of her seriously. Who is Choner? Why are you so infatuated with her? Li Yundong looked deeply at the enchantress in front of him, who looked exactly like Su Chan, and sighed. You don't know her. She's like you, a fox demon, but her cultivation is not as high as yours. She's only an 8-tailed fox. Su Daiji suddenly said, could it be the 8-tailed fox with 2 golden tails? Li Yundong took a deep breath and said with a sullen face, go before I change my mind. I want to save my Choner. No matter how difficult the magic formation is, I will save her. As he said this, he turned around and was about to leave. Su Daiji looked at him and suddenly said, hey, this magic formation was refined by the goddess using the 9-colored rainflower stone and Mount Buzhou. It can't be broken from the outside. It can only be broken from the inside. Li Yundong was overjoyed and turned around like a gust of wind. He widened his eyes and grabbed Su Daiji's arm tightly with both hands. Then how can I get in? Su Daiji was in pain from his grip, but she didn't dare to cry out loudly. She said in a trembling voice, you can't get in. Once the magic formation is activated, no one can get in, even the goddess herself. Only if the power of the people inside is stronger than the magic formation can they break out. Li Yundong was stunned when he heard this, and his eyes were full of despair. Stronger than the power of the magic formation? Even I can't get in. How can Chan'er's power become stronger than this magic formation? At this time, Su Daiji only felt that Li Yundong's hands were like iron hoops, tighter and tighter. She couldn't bear the pain and cried out loudly, "It hurts." Only then did Li Yundong come to his senses. He looked at the delicate beauty in front of him, who looked like Su Chan, looking at him with tears in her eyes. His heart immediately softened, and he slowly let go of his hands. He asked unwillingly in a trembling voice, "Is there no other way besides this?" Su Daiji looked at Li Yundong timidly and shook her head. "No." Li Yundong raised his head and roared. He turned around and flew toward the magic formation where Su Chan was trapped. His voice came from afar, "Go." Su Daiji looked in the direction where Li Yundong had disappeared, and a strange light flashed in her eyes. She suddenly shouted, "You saved my life. I will definitely repay you in my next life." After that, she knelt down and kowtowed 3 times in the direction where Li Yundong had left. After getting up, Su Daiji's expression changed. She looked at the sky, gritted her teeth, and pointed at the sky. She shouted sternly, "Goddess, you are so heartless." It was obviously Patriarch Subhuti who played tricks to frame Xian, but you pushed me into the fire pit. Now that you have succeeded, you are afraid that future generations will criticize you. You want to kill me to keep my mouth shut. How vicious you are. Su Daiji cursed, and the more she cursed, the more her body trembled. Patriarch Hongjun, you are so shameless. You are the god of gods, but you have a crooked brain on an ordinary emperor in the human world. You watched them frame me, but you were indifferent. How cold you are. Heavenly Lord Yuanshi, you are so shameless. You are the head of the 3 pure ones, but you used such a despicable method to plot against your junior brother's foundation. You watched hundreds of millions of people fall into the flames of war, just to fulfill your personal grudge. How vicious you are. Taoist Kundi, you are so despicable. You are the Western sect master, but you have a covetous heart. For your own selfish desires, you ignited the flames of war in the world and framed a wise emperor. How despicable you are. The more Su Daiji scolded, the more agitated she became. She cursed the gods in the sky one after another. In the end, she grabbed her long hair that almost touched the ground and used her sharp fingernails to lift it. She immediately broke a section of her beautiful hair. She pointed to the sky and swore, "From today onwards, my 9-tailed celestial fox clan will no longer have anything to do with the gods of the heaven realm. If I, Su Daiji, am successful in my cultivation in the future, I will definitely take revenge. If I am unsuccessful in this life, I will swear on my broken hair that if my 9-tailed fox clan has a reincarnated celestial fox in my next life, I will definitely kill my way up to the 9 heavens and kill all of you hypocritical and sinister immortals." Su Daiji forcefully placed the broken hair in her hand on the ground. The black hair fluttered in the air for a while. As soon as it landed on the ground, there was a loud rumble of thunder, followed by a heavy downpour. Su Daiji sneered and looked at the deep and cold sky. Without saying anything else, she turned around and disappeared into the rainstorm forest in an instant. She could no longer be seen. This is the update on the 18th. I was too busy and only started writing it very late. Sorry, everyone, don't wait anymore. It's too late. I will wake up early tomorrow morning to write it. Chapter 9:18. Li Yunyang was worried about Su Chan's safety, so he rushed to the palace of Deer Terrace Pavilion anxiously. But at this time, King Zhou, who was fighting with the gods above Deer Terrace Pavilion, was also anxious. Although he was fighting with 24 golden immortals, he was very observant. When he saw that Su Daiji had escaped from the magic formation, but was being chased by Li Yunyang, he was even more anxious. King Zhou wanted to save Daji, but how could 24 golden immortals be weak? Although they each had their own ulterior motives, some of them were unwilling to do their best, and some of them were like Taoist Huan Long who was shouting on the side, but they were almost onlookers. King Zhou couldn't defeat these 24 golden immortals, but it was difficult for him to escape from their siege. He was so angry that his roars were earth-shattering. However, none of the 24 golden immortals dared to fight with King Zhou directly. Almost all those who had powerful magical weapons were using them to resist, and those who didn't had no powerful magical weapons were watching from afar. When King Zhou attacked, they ran away. When King Zhou left, they scolded. Those who were more capable would use some magic to provoke King Zhou. Although Zhou Qin, Wan Hongling, and Lin Miao were worried about Su Chan and kept looking at the palace, they were also shocked by King Zhou's roar, which could almost pierce their eardrums. Lin Miao had also read the legend of deification and knew something about King Zhou, but she really didn't know that King Zhou was so powerful. She covered her ears and said in a trembling voice, "This King Zhou is really powerful." To be fair, King Zhou, who was also known as Dxian, was indeed a rare emperor in the history of China, who was good at both literature and martial arts. Among the emperors of China, there were only a few who were famous for their bravery and martial arts. Among them, except for King Zhou, the one with the highest martial arts was Zhao Kuangyin, the founder of the Song dynasty. Zhao Kuangyin's kung fu was passed on to ancestor Chen Tuan. He was originally the most insignificant pawn. Relying on a staff and a pair of fists, he was invincible all over the world. He killed countless people on the battlefield in his life, and forcibly climbed from a small soldier to the position of emperor. The Taizu's long fist and Taizu's staff technique were created by Zhao Kuangyin. In China's martial arts, there were still famous moves such as the Great Ancestor inspecting the horse. Similarly, Tang Taizong, Li Shimin, was also one of the few emperors who was skilled in martial arts. During the heroic era of the Sui and Tang dynasties, Li Shimin was known as the #1 archer in the world. He often fought with Yuqi Jingde, the #1 archer in the world, on the battlefield. Among them were Emperor Gaozu of Han, Liu Bang, who beheaded the snake and rebelled, Xiang Yu, the conqueror of Chu, who carried 1,000 caddies of strength, Zhu Yuanzhang, the Emperor Taizu of Ming, who chased and killed tens of thousands of Yuan soldiers with only a few of his brothers. However, if all the emperors of China were to fight together, they might not be able to defeat King Zhou alone. The reason was very simple. King Zhou lived in the last years of the Shang dynasty, in the most brilliant and prosperous period of the world of cultivation. In this era, everyone was cultivating, and those with a little bit of family background were great cultivators. King Zhou was a descendant of the emperor, so naturally, there was no reason for him not to cultivate. His talent was too amazing, and he had the financial resources of a country to support his cultivation. His cultivation was so high that it was simply unimaginable for others. Sun Zi. Fei Xiangtian commented on King Xian. He was tall and beautiful, the best in the world. His muscles were so strong that he could defeat 100 people. Records of the Grand Historian. Yin Benji also commented on King Zhou. Emperor Zhou was talented in discerning diseases, very sensitive in hearing and seeing, outstanding in material strength, and could fight ferocious beasts. Even the people of Zhou, who had defeated King Zhou and tried their best to smear him, had to admit that Emperor Zhou was gifted with intelligence and keen in hearing and seeing. He was slightly older and had outstanding physical strength, so he had the power to pull 9 bulls and the power to change pillars. In history, a person should not only be compared vertically, but also horizontally. Although Xiang Yu was also so strong that he could defeat 100 people, Xiang Yu and King Zhou lived in different eras, so his enemies were naturally different. Xiang Yu's enemies were ordinary people, or at most, martial artists. However, King Zhou's enemies were 100 cultivators. In history, the strongmen who could pull 9 bulls were mostly water buffaloes, cattle, or yellow oxen in the human world. In the Shang dynasty, where divine beasts were everywhere and immortals were as numerous as dogs, what kind of ox did King Zhou pull? It was the green ox, the one-legged ox. Volume 900 of Taiping Royal Reading quoted from the Song Gao Ji. There was a pine tree on the mountain that was thousands of years old, and its essence became the green ox. Mountain and Sea Scripture. The Eastern scripture of Great Wilderness described the Kuei ox as follows. It was shaped like an ox, with no horns and one leg. When it entered and exited the water, there would be wind and rain. Its light was like the sun and the moon, and its sound was like thunder. Its name was Kuei. As for what kind of divine beasts the green ox and the Kuei ox were and what kind of power they had, one could tell by looking at their respective masters. The green ox was the mount of Taishang Lao Jun, and the Kuei ox was the mount of Tong Tian. How could the mounts chosen by the two main deities of the three pristine ones be easy to deal with? King Zhou's strength to pull the 9 bulls was simply earth-shattering. King Zhou's bravery and strength made him invincible in the world. He unified the southeast, Dongyi, and the plains. Even the founder of the heavenly dynasty, Lao Mao, commented that King Zhou was actually a very capable man who was good at both literature and martial arts. If Western Zhou had not received the support and help of the Clan of Enlightenment and the tacit approval of Patriarch Hongjun, Ji Chang would never have dared to rebel even if he was 100 times braver. However, although King Zhou was brave and fierce, he also had his limitations. He had been fighting and killing all year round and was good at close combat. He was proud of his bravery and disdained to use magic arts and magic treasures. He thought that he could defeat all his enemies with the power of his fists. Because of this, King Zhou was entangled by 24 golden immortals. He wanted to fight to the death, but they kept kiting him. He wanted to rush out to save Su Daiji, but they were like maggots attached to bones, following him closely. The development of cultivation methods and magic in this era was far less developed than that of the later generations. King Zhou did not know the Yang spirit doppelganger, so he could only chase one person at a time. But whoever he chased would turn around and run away. King Zhou could not catch up with them even if he wanted to, which made him furious. King Zhou stood in the air, pointed at a golden immortal and shouted angrily, "Guangchengzi, do you dare to fight against me?" Guangchengzi, the teacher of the Yellow Emperor Xianyuan and the head of the famous golden immortals, pointed at King Zhou without hesitation and said, "There is no need to talk about rules when dealing with a tyrant like you. Everyone, go." King Zhou was angry. "I talked about a one-on-one fight with you, but you talked about a group fight with me." Good. Very good. He couldn't help but let loose a torrent of curses. As a descendant of an emperor, the endless obscenities coming out of his mouth were truly eye-popping. However, these golden immortals were really powerful. They all pretended to be deaf and dumb, and just kept attacking him. At this time, Li Yundong had already rushed back. As soon as he arrived, he only glanced at King Zhou, who was being besieged, and had no intention of saving him. Soon, he withdrew his gaze and shouted at Su Chan, who was in the golden light formation, "Chaner, can you hear me?" Through the broken hole in the palace, he could see that Su Chan was lying in the golden light at this time. Her body was lying on the ground, almost motionless. The 2 golden fox tails, which had been twisting strangely, also drooped down, and there was no movement at all. Li Yundong's heart sank when he saw this, and he couldn't help but rush toward the formation. "Chaner, how are you? Are you all right?" As soon as his body touched the golden pillar of light, he was immediately bounced away and sent flying far away. At this time, Su Chan, who was in the formation, finally moved a little. Her body trembled slightly, and she struggled to raise her head. Her lips moved, but she could no longer make a sound. She seemed to be saying in a trembling voice, "Yundong, go." Li Yundong's eyes were bloodshot. He was so angry that he wanted to go crazy. He raised his fists and smashed them at the golden light formation like crazy. His smash caused a deafening rumble, and even the heavens and the earth shook. The 24 golden immortals, who were fighting fiercely with King Zhou, felt as if they had returned to the era when Gonggang and Zhuanshu fought for the throne. Gonggang was defeated and touched Mount Buzhou in anger. At this moment, it seemed that Mount Biyao, which supported heaven and earth, had collapsed, and the earth had been torn apart. The momentum was so terrible that it made people's expressions change. The attention of the 24 golden immortals was slightly distracted. At this time, the pressure on King Zhou was greatly reduced. He turned his head to look at Li Yundong, and the fire in his heart was really vented on Li Yundong. Where is my beloved concubine? Where is Daji? What did you do to her? Li Yundong's mind was in a mess now. How could he be in the mood to pay attention to him? He just kept attacking the formation crazily with red eyes. Seeing that Li Yundong didn't even look at him, King Zhou was really angry, and he became bold. With a roar, he rushed toward Li Yundong. Li Yundong only felt a gust of wind behind him, and an extremely terrible force slapped him from behind. In his anger, he turned around without hesitation and slapped him with his palm. With a loud bang, Li Yundong and King Zhou collided head-on. Both of them trembled and flew backward. As the reincarnation of Wisdom King, Li Yundong's divine power could be imagined, and King Zhou was also the divine power king who rarely met an opponent. In this head-on fight with Li Yundong, he was really well matched. He couldn't help but let out a long roar and almost burst into tears in his heart. **CK, I've been kite all my life. Finally, I met an opponent who dared to fight me head-on. King Zhou was full of anger. Not to mention that Li Yundong was concerned about the safety of Daji. Even if he was just a passerby, King Zhou would still, no matter who you are, I'll beat you first. Li Yundong was burning with anxiety, but King Zhou intervened forcefully. In a fit of rage, he glared at King Zhou and roared, "Get out of my way." King Zhou also shouted angrily, "Where is my Daji? Did you kill her?" Both of them were like erupting volcanoes. Without saying a word, they immediately fought. They punched and kicked each other, all of which were close combat moves. Banging sounds could be heard as they fought, which made the faces of the onlookers turn pale. The 24 golden immortals looked at each other and were somewhat confused. They had no idea where Li Yundong came from and why he was entangled with King Zhou. LV Sheng pointed at Li Yundong and said loudly, "I wonder who you are. Why did you save these fox demons and fight against King Zhou?" It would have been better if he hadn't said that. As soon as he said that, Li Yundong immediately stared at him with bloodshot eyes. In Li Yundong's opinion, these people were all accomplices, and maybe they had a way to break the formation. He shouted angrily and rushed toward the 24 golden immortals, "Hand over the method to break the formation, or all of you will die." Hearing this, the 24 golden immortals were so angry that their eyes turned black. **CK, we were kind enough to help you fight King Zhou, but you hit us instead? Well, since you don't appreciate it, I'll kill you too." In an instant, the 24 golden immortals took action one after another. Many powerful magical weapons hit King Zhou and Li Yundong together. Chapter 919. The 24 golden immortals attacked angrily, covering the sky with magic arts and dazzling magic treasures. Li Yundong and King Zhou were shrouded in it at the same time and disappeared in an instant. However, Li Yundong and King Zhou were not ordinary people. One was a reincarnated wisdom king who had been tempered by thunder and fire. He had gone through the heavenly tribulation once and several times. His jinshin was extremely condensed, and his Nidanjinshi was vigorous and majestic. The other was an emperor with the strength of 9 oxen. He had been fighting all his life and had never met a rival. He was the emperor with the highest cultivation in history. One of them held the Akalanatha seal and faced the enemy with the immovable Akalanatha, while the other punched and kicked with unparalleled divine power. No matter what magic the other side used, Li Yundong just made a big handprint, which could not be moved by the wind, and immediately shattered it on the spot. King Zhou's response was even simpler. His punches and kicks had the power of heaven and earth. Even if the magic treasures of golden immortals were hit by his punches, they would buzz and tremble. They would be sent flying far away, not daring to approach for a long time. The two of them dealt with the siege of the 24 golden immortals in midair. They turned their heads angrily and attacked the 24 golden immortals. They attacked at the same time, and the 24 golden immortals were almost defeated. Many of them fled far away on the spot. Only Guang Qingzi and other top masters of golden immortal strength could hold on and fight on the spot. The 24 golden immortals were scattered by Li Yundong and King Zhou, and the pressure on them was immediately reduced. They immediately punched and kicked each other, fighting back and forth. The more Li Yundong fought, the more anxious he became. He kept looking at the palace on the ground, wishing he could tear the golden magic formation into pieces. As he fought, he shouted angrily at the 24 golden immortals who were scattered in the distance, "Hurry up and remove this magic formation. Su Daiji is not inside. Why did you do such a cruel thing?" LV Shang snorted and said, "They are also her kind. Everyone has the right to kill demons and ghosts." Li Yundong was furious. *T, what are you riding on? Wouldn't they be demons and ghosts then? What grudges do they have against you? LV Shang only sneered. Guang Qingzi also said in a deep voice, "The formation has been activated and the deities are out of the way. Don't waste your time." Li Yunyang was furious and crazily attacked the 24 golden immortals. Unlike King Zhou, he didn't know how to split himself. As soon as his yang spirit scattered, he immediately chased some of the weaker golden immortals around. Seeing this scene, King Zhou laughed out loud and also chased after the 24 golden immortals. However, he was slow. After chasing excitedly for a long time, he couldn't catch up with any of them. He immediately became angry again. He turned his head and glared at Li Yundong with a pair of big eyes. In his heart, he still felt that Li Yundong was a better opponent because he dared to fight with him head-on. Thinking of this, King Zhou turned his head and hit Li Yundong again, blaming all the unhappiness in his heart on Li Yundong. Before King Zhou met Su Daiji, he was indeed a wise king who was good at both literature and martial arts. Just like Emperor Xuanzong of Tang before he met Yang Guifei, he was also an enlightened king. But people always change. In the later period of Emperor Xuanzong of Tang, he became extremely muddle-headed. Not only did he steal his son's wife, but he also never went to the morning court. He changed from a wise and powerful king to a muddle-headed old man. The same was true of King Zhou. After he met Su Daiji, he thought that he was invincible in the world. His character slowly changed. He became arrogant and headstrong. Except for Su Daiji, he didn't listen to anyone else. Later, he killed Baigan, imprisoned GZ, built the palace Deer Terrace, and built the notorious Jochi Ro forest. Finally, he gave the Zhou people a reason to rebel and a righteous reason. At this time, King Zhou still didn't think that it was his fault that the people in the world rebelled. Just like what Emperor Chongzhen said before he hanged himself on the coal mountain with tears, "I am not the king of a subjugated country, and all the ministers are subjugated ministers." King Zhou had been headstrong and self-opinionated these years. He was used to repaying kindness and enmity. Although it was a matter of life and death, if he was a little scheming, he would know that he should unite with Li Yundong to defeat the 24 golden immortals first. But King Zhou would rather vent his anger first. "No matter whether you are good or bad, I will fight you first." As he pestered endlessly, Li Yundong's attack was blocked immediately. King Zhou was good at strength. No matter what kind of change or magic power his opponent had in the world, he only had strength. But for a master like him, the one who could restrain him the most and give him the most threat was also an opponent who was good at strength. King Zhou attacked Li Yundong indiscriminately, which made Li Yundong, who was in a hurry to save King Zhou, mad. He gritted his teeth so hard that they almost broke. Furious, he slapped King Zhou backhandedly and shouted, "You're courting death." As soon as they fought, their bodies shook again. Li Yundong flew backward, and King Zhou also took a few steps back. Then he laughed and said, "Good, good." At this time, He saw that a golden immortal next to him wanted to sneak attack Li Yundong, so he also punched him backhandedly. A fist energy hit the golden immortal like a cannonball, sending him flying dozens of meters away. He laughed and said, "Shameless villain, don't try to sneak attack me." The 24 golden immortals were immediately furious and concentrated on attacking King Zhou with all their strength. But as soon as they surrounded King Zhou, Li Yundong attacked again. The three forces were entangled in a mess, and it was difficult to distinguish between them. The situation suddenly became extremely tense. At this time, Su Chan, who was trapped in the magic formation, was moaning in pain. She felt as if an invisible mountain was pressing on her back, and her young spirit was almost ground into powder. She could only barely raise her head, trying to see Li Yundong, who was besieged in mid-air through the thick walls of the palace. Her eyes were full of hope. She didn't want Li Yundong to save her, because as a fox spirit, she naturally knew how terrifying and powerful this Howren force was. She knew that although Li Yundong was Wisdom King, he could not shake this magic formation. This magic formation was like a huge furnace, covered with a tripod. The inside was burning with alchemy fire. The outside was extremely hard, but the inside was burning hot. Su Chan could not cope with such burning supernatural energy at all. She felt that the power of her young spirit was getting weaker and weaker. In the darkness, death was approaching step by step. The chilling breathing and footsteps made her despair. At this moment, Su Chan only hoped that Li Yundong could leave her behind and quickly leave this terrible place with Zhou Qin, Wan Hongling, and Lin Miao. Don't lose your life here because of her. Su Chan's divine sense gradually became a little fuzzy. Slowly, her eyes darkened, and she didn't even have the strength to look up. Her eyes drooped down little by little, and her mouth wriggled gently. She seemed to be murmuring in a low voice, "Yundong, leave me alone. Go, go." The mystical silver fox, who was also locked in the magic formation with her, was sitting cross-legged with her hands pinched together. Her brows were tightly furrowed, and her face was full of pain. She was burned to the point that her whole body seemed to be melting. If it weren't for her amazing cultivation, her soul would have been destroyed at this time. But after all, this was a special magic formation that was specially designed to restrain the demon fox clan. The mystical silver fox endured it for a while, and finally, she couldn't bear it anymore. She groaned in pain, tilted her body, and fell to the ground. She fell to the ground, her black hair scattered, and she was extremely embarrassed. However, the mystical silver fox still looked at Su Chan unwillingly. She knew that she still had a chance to live. The mystical silver fox stretched out her hand in pain and slowly crawled toward Su Chan. Every inch she crawled, she almost exhausted all her strength. She gritted her teeth and shouted wildly in her heart, "I can't die here. I'm the mystical silver fox. I can't die like this." The mystical silver fox crawled to Su Chan inch by inch. She slowly reached out her hand and put it on Su Chan's arm. Her Jinqi surged toward her, trying to merge with Su Chan's soul and yang spirit. The moment the mystical silver fox saw Su Chan's two golden fox tails, she understood that Su Chan was the real body of the heavenly fox formed by her other soul and two spirits. However, this soul and two spirits had been wandering in the world for too long. Slowly, the fox body had cultivated its own soul, spiritual power, and human body. It had become another fox demon, no longer a pure clone of the mystical silver fox. When the mystical silver fox knew about this, she didn't make it public. She wasn't sure how sincere the relationship between Li Yundong and Su Chan was. She was afraid that Li Yundong, the reincarnated Wisdom King, would turn against her at the critical moment like in her previous life and destroy her real body of the demon fox. Then she would cry without tears. Moreover, after so many years and so many reincarnations, her real body of the fox demon had long had an independent soul and divine sense. If she rashly merged with it, it would definitely cause a strong backlash. Therefore, she could only wait for a good opportunity, an opportunity for Su Chan to be alone. However, Su Chan had always been inseparable from Li Yundong. Even if she wanted to do it, she had no chance. It was not easy for her to wait for the opportunity, but it was at the moment when she was about to die. The jinqi of the mystical silver fox flowed continuously into Su Chan's body. At this time, Su Chan only felt a vast power surging towards her. She was like a traveler who had fainted from thirst in the desert. Suddenly, a clear spring was poured into her mouth, and she immediately woke up. When Su Chan saw the mystical silver fox, she immediately understood something. She shouted and shrank back. "What do you want to do?" At this critical moment of life and death, the beautiful face of the mystical silver fox suddenly became extremely ferocious. She let out a shrill roar and used the last of her strength to pounce on Su Chan. Su Chan gritted her teeth and fought desperately with the rest of her courage. At this time, she was an 8-tailed fox, and she had exchanged yin and yang qi with Li Yundong. When she fought with her life on the line, she couldn't be underestimated. What's more, both of them were being burned in the magic formation, and their cultivation quotients were greatly reduced. If they fought with each other, it would be difficult to decide the outcome for a while. The mystical silver fox and Su Chan were entangled for a while, and then she felt that her spiritual power and jinqi were being consumed even more by the magic formation. In despair, she couldn't help shouting at Su Chan, "Are you crazy? You are my real body of the heavenly fox. Why are you resisting me?" Su Chan said angrily, "I am me, and you are you." The mystical silver fox wanted to go forward again, but she was already powerless. She couldn't help but say in despair, "Are you willing to die in this place? Only when the two of us join hands can we escape together." Su Chan was so weak that she gasped for breath, but she still sneered and said, "Do you think I'm a 3-year-old child? Do you want to trick me and seize my soul and divine sense like President Chao?" The mystical silver fox's thoughts were seen through. Seeing that Su Chan was stubborn and that she would die together with her, she couldn't help but think in despair, "Does God want me to die? I, the mystical silver fox, have been dominating the world. Am I going to die here today?" Chapter 920. Su Chan and the mystical silver fox were constantly losing their jinqi in the magic formation. After fighting with the mystical silver fox for a while, the little girl became weaker and weaker. Everything in front of her seemed to be shaking violently. The palace, which had been surrounded by steam, seemed to have turned into a volcanic crater with white smoke. The boiling magma below burned her to death bit by bit. Su Chan hoped that Li Yundong would ignore her and run away quickly, but she also knew in her heart that Li Yundong was not a man who would leave her and run for his life. If he were such a person, how could she have fallen in love with him and followed him? At this time, Zhaoga City was in chaos. From time to time, there were deafening explosions of magic spells and angry shouts, as well as the terrible sound of fists hitting flesh, in the sky of Deer Terrace Pavilion. When Su Chan heard this sound, her eyes were full of worry and anxiety. She bit her lips and didn't notice that there was a trace of blood at the corner of her mouth. She thought with fear and anxiety in her heart, "How is Yundong? So many golden immortals are beating him. Is he injured? What about Sister Zhou Qin? Can she escape? What about Wan Hongling and Lin Miao? Hurry up and run. Hurry and run. Fight with King Zhou and all the immortals in the sky. You can't beat them." Su Chan wished she could shout these words out loud, but she no longer had the strength to do so. Right now, it took all the strength in her body to even lift her eyes. She lay limply on the ground, staring at the big hole that had opened up on the top of the palace. Looking out from this big hole, although she couldn't see Li Yundong fighting with King Zhou and the 24 golden immortals, the sky was colorful at this time. Although it was already night, it was illuminated by the colorful divine light from time to time, as if it was daytime. The little girl lay motionless on the ground and looked at the sky blankly. She wanted to but was powerless. Even speaking was an extravagant hope. The mystical silver fox was also lying beside her, panting heavily. She still struggled and said, "Do you want to die like this at such a young age? Listen to me, I'll only borrow your soul to escape. After I escape, I'll leave. How about that?" Su Chan didn't seem to hear it. She just looked at the sky weakly. At this time, a loud shout came from the sky. "You are going against the heaven, and you are bringing about your own destruction. Take this." With a loud boom, the Deer Terrace Pavilion Palace seemed to collapse from the tremors. Many rubble fell from the shattered palace, but the moment the rubble came into contact with the golden Dharma array, it turned to dust as it fell from the sky. Su Chan was shocked, and her eyes became even more worried. Who is this? He looked so powerful. Could Yundong beat him? The mystical silver fox had been observing Su Chan carefully, unwilling to give up. At this time, she observed her expression and keenly captured what Su Chan was thinking. She gasped and said, "Do you know who this person is? Pagoda-bearing Heavenly King, do you really think that these 24 golden immortals are fake? Don't be silly. They just wanted to preserve their strength, so they didn't use their full strength. Now that they were in a hurry, they would kill Li Yundong. Do you really want to see him die in front of you?" This sentence struck the softest spot in Su Chan's heart. Although the corners of her mouth had cracked from the scorching heat, tears still slowly rolled down her cheeks. Of course, she didn't want to see Li Yundong die. She didn't want to die either. The little girl hadn't been with the master enough. The two of them were sweet and loving, and the days were too short. There was a long time in the future. How could she die like this? Tears rolled down Su Chan's eyes. Her heart ached like a knife. If possible, she must persuade Li Yundong not to chase after the mystical silver fox. They could live their lives in peace. There were so many capable people in the world. Why did they have to take care of these things? The little girl was very sad. She turned her head with difficulty and said in a trembling voice, "Will you really help Yundong after you go out?" Seeing that Su Chan was finally shaken, the mystical silver fox was ecstatic. She raised her hand with difficulty and swore to the sky while panting, "I, the mystical silver fox, have never broken my promise. I swear to you that if I go out, I will never fight with the reincarnated Wisdom King." Su Chan shook her head slightly and struggled to say, "You can't hurt him. Otherwise, I won't let you live a happy life." The mystical silver fox saw that her life was hanging by a thread, but she still cared about Li Yundong. She couldn't help admiring Su Chan's chastity and determination. After she nodded with all her strength, Su Chan slowly closed her eyes as if she had used up the last bit of her strength. The mystical silver fox didn't dare to delay any longer. She gritted her teeth and turned into countless golden clones in an instant, drilling into Su Chan's body. As soon as their souls came into contact with each other, there was a buzzing sound. It was as if a bomb had exploded in the magic circle. The original 8 fox tails under Su Chan's body gradually grew a golden fox tail. Then, she changed into the real body of the fox demon bit by bit. The fiery red fur on her body slowly turned white, but when it reached the tail, the newly grown white fox tail and the original 6 white fox tails gradually turned into a golden fox tail. This was the real body of the heavenly fox, which the mystical silver fox had relied on to be invincible in the Chinese cultivation world. At this time, the white fur of the mystical silver fox was soft and smooth, like silk. Her eyes were blood red, as if the sea of blood in hell had condensed and compressed into a ball, like thick blood that could not be melted. The mystical silver fox finally recovered all her strength again. In her ecstasy, she couldn't help raising her head and letting out a long roar. Although the golden magic circle was powerful, it was only set up for the 9-tailed celestial fox of this era. The mystical silver fox was a great master of the fox demon race that had not appeared in the world for thousands of years. Her real body of the 9-tailed celestial fox was enough to allow her to resist the erosion of the spiritual energy in this magic circle. It was not like before, when she had just entered the magic circle, where she had been suppressed to the point that she could not flow any Jinqi in her body. After a long roar, the mystical silver fox raised one foot and stamped on the ground. With a crack, a huge hole appeared on the ground of the palace. Then, her figure flashed and she got into the crack. The mystical silver fox drilled into the ground. When she came out of the ground again, she had already broken out of the magic circle. As soon as she came out, she took a deep breath greedily and stared at Li Jiandong's back with a fierce light in her eyes. But as soon as the killing intent rose in her heart, she suddenly heard a voice buzzing in her mind. After you get out, you must not hurt him. This voice shook the mystical silver fox's forehead. She was shocked. She knew that she had just merged with Su Chan's soul and had not completely merged. She naturally knew what she was thinking. The mystical silver fox snorted and said, "Don't worry, I won't trouble him. He's lucky to meet a silly woman like you. Let me tell you, all the men in the world are unreliable. You are so infatuated with him, but he may not be so infatuated with you." At this time, Su Chan did not respond in her mind. It seemed that only when the mystical silver fox wanted to kill Li Jiandong would her consciousness wake up. The mystical silver fox chuckled. She looked at Li Jiandong unwillingly and said in a low voice, "Let me expose the true face of all the men in the world for you. I'll let you die for him." Just as she was about to step forward, Li Jiandong also heard a long roar. He turned his head and saw a nine-tailed celestial fox with white fur and 7 extremely enchanting fox tails standing in the air, staring at him. Li Jiandong's mind raced. He was a very smart person. At this moment, he understood what had just happened. His heart sank, and a frightening thought arose spontaneously. It's like this. It's like this. Li Jiandong's eyes immediately turned blood red. He pounced on the mystical silver fox like crazy and said, "What did you do to my Choner?" The mystical silver fox shouted angrily, "Akalanatha, don't be so ungrateful. If I hadn't combined with her, how could I have escaped from this magic formation? Do you expect me to save her?" Li Jiandong trembled all over. He was shocked, angry, frightened, and frightened. The most terrible thing that had been buried deep in his heart had finally become true. He hissed in shock and anger, "Hurry up and give her soul back to me, or I." The mystical silver fox laughed wildly and said, "Or what will you do?" Li Jiandong stopped talking. He instantly thought, even if I can defeat the mystical silver fox, what if I attack too hard and hurt Su Chan in her body? Li Jiandong was so afraid that he was trembling with anger. At this time, not only was he extremely shocked and angry, but the 24 golden immortals and King Zhou in the sky were also shocked. They had never seen such a nine-tailed celestial fox. Su Daji was originally the leader of the Fox Demon clan. She was famous for her beauty in the heaven realm, but she was not good at magic power. But at this time, the nine-tailed celestial fox in front of her was releasing an amazing power. This power was extremely terrible, even more powerful than any of the golden immortals present. King Zhou looked at the mystical silver fox with wide eyes and couldn't help shouting, "Who are you? What's the relationship between you and my beloved concubine, Daji?" Almost at the same time, Guangchengzi in the sky also said in a loud voice, "Tushan, for the sake of your clan's meritorious service in destroying the Shang dynasty, why don't you come back quickly?" The mystical silver fox had been scheming against others all her life. How could she not know that the 24 golden immortals were afraid of her power and wanted to trick her to go there? When she went there, they would slowly deal with her. Since ancient times, the group in power had been best at this. First, they would coax them with kind words, and then they would slowly deal with them after they gave in. It was the same in the human world and in the heaven realm. The mystical silver fox was not willing to be fooled. She laughed angrily, and her 9 golden fox tails twisted in the air like golden flames. "You hypocritical guys, don't play this trick with me. Today, I will let you know how powerful I am." She turned her head and shouted at Li Yundong, "King Ming, do you want to see your little lover? Come with me." After that, she let out a shrill roar and pounced on the 24 golden immortals. The mystical silver fox's strength was outstanding, and her magic power and magic were unparalleled in the world. Her heavenly fox real body was almost immune to any magic treasures. As soon as she entered the field, the 24 golden immortals were in a hurry. When Li Yundong heard the last words of the mystical silver fox, his heart skipped a beat. Although he didn't understand what she meant, he had a faint glimmer of hope in his heart. Although he knew that it was slim, he still gritted his teeth, pinched the Mahamudra with both hands, and blasted it toward the golden immortals all over the sky. King Zhou was stunned when he saw this, and then he burst out laughing. Well, you lowly people of Chan School also have such a day? He also shouted and pounced on them. The three of them were all top masters. This time, the 24 golden immortals were beaten to the point that they were no longer in the mood to fight and scattered one after another. It was not that they couldn't beat them, but that the 24 golden immortals were all afraid of each other. They had ulterior motives and cherished their feathers too much, so they refused to use their full strength. Naturally, they were chased around by Li Yundong, the mystical silver fox, and King Zhou like ducks. Li Yundong and the mystical silver fox chased after Guangchengzi and Lu Shang's group. King Zhou was slow and fell behind after chasing for a while. He wanted to chase after them again, but he saw a person flying up from the city. The person was Grand Tutor Wen. Grand Tutor Wen shouted at King Zhou, "Xian, my king, don't chase after him. It's almost midnight. Don't wait. I have to be busy with other things later." Chapter 921. It wasn't that King Zhou didn't want to chase after them, but he really couldn't catch up with them. He had been stopped by Grand Preceptor Wen for a while, but Li Yundong and the others had already disappeared. He looked at them with hatred and turned to look at Chaoga, who was in the sea of fire. He gritted his teeth and said, "The Western Zhou dynasty is hateful. They deserve to be killed." After saying that, he angrily rushed towards the city. Li Yundong and the mystical silver fox chased after the 24 golden immortals and beat them up fiercely. Each and every one of them were already famous figures, but at this moment, they were being chased by two unknown figures all over the mountains and plains. At this time, they really missed those powerful magic treasures that once belonged to them. Guangchengzi was so embarrassed that he flew into a rage. His most powerful magic treasure, the Xianyuan sword, had been given away. If the Xianyuan sword was still there, how could he be chased around by these two unknown people? Most of the other golden immortals were the same. Their magic treasures were either given to their disciples or destroyed in the battle. At the moment, there was no good magic treasure to suppress Li Yundong and the mystical silver fox. The mystical silver fox had been suppressed in the magic formation before, so she had been holding back her anger for a long time. Moreover, she didn't know why, but when she saw the immortals all over the sky, she felt an inexplicable anger in her heart. She wanted to kill all these immortals and then kill her way up to the 9th heaven. That would make her feel good. She chased after them, and Li Yundong had to help. If he stood by and the 24 golden immortals killed the mystical silver fox, it would be a small matter. If Su Chan was also involved, it would be a big deal. They chased and fled all the way. Lu Shang, who was riding on the deer, was annoyed. As he ran, he turned his head and shouted at Guangchengzi, "Immortal Master Kong Tong, why don't you use the flipping sky seal?" Guangchengzi was from Ruzhou, Hunan province. He lived in the stone room of Mount Kongtong, so people called him Immortal Master Kongtong. The flipping sky seal was the most earth-shattering magic treasure of Guangchengzi besides the Xianyuan sword. Yi. Z. U. Back then, when Gonggang and Zhuanshu fought for the throne, Gonggang suffered a crushing defeat. In a fit of rage, Gonggang couldn't think straight, so he turned around and crushed Mount Buzhou. After the collapse of Mount Buzhou, Goddess Nviwa was busy mending the sky. Heavenly Lord Yuanshi saw that Mount Buzhou was a heavenly pillar with abundant spiritual qi, so he refined the broken half of Mount Buzhou into the flipping heaven seal. The flipping heaven seal could be as large as 1,000 miles or as small as a palm. The bottom of the seal was engraved with the words, "Flipping Heaven." After refining it into a magic weapon, Heavenly Lord Yuanshi gave it to Guangchengzi as a protective magic weapon. Guangchengzi treasured this magic treasure the most and was reluctant to use it unless it was a critical moment. The reason was actually very simple. When cultivators fought, they would naturally bump into each other. Sometimes, if they were not careful, not only would their bodies and cauldrons be annihilated, but the magic treasures that they had painstakingly refined over the years would also be broken. A magic treasure like the Flipping Heaven seal could be said to be a trump card. If it collided with the powerful magic treasure of the other party and was damaged, it would be really embarrassing. When Guangchengzi heard Lu Shang's shout, he immediately gritted his teeth and took out a yin-like thing from his bosom. He pointed at the mystical silver fox and shouted, "Die." After that, he raised his palm, and the Flipping Heaven seal rose into the air. In the blink of an eye, it flew into the air, leaving only a small black spot. But in the blink of an eye, when the Flipping Heaven seal fell again, it was already as huge as a mountain, pressing down on the mystical silver fox with overwhelming force. At this time, although the 24 golden immortals had been chased away, they were not ordinary people after all. At this time, when they saw Guangchengzi release his trump card, they immediately gathered together again. Following the Flipping Heaven seal, they used their magic treasures and attacked from all directions. However, the Flipping Heaven seal was a top magic treasure that could be ranked in the top 10 in the Chinese cultivation world. It was specially used to hit the top of a cultivator's head. If it was hit, even a golden immortal would immediately be destroyed in body and soul. It was definitely not an ordinary thing. If the mystical silver fox was hit in the head by this magic treasure, she would probably immediately turn into a pool of mud. There would be no exception. When the mystical silver fox saw the Flipping Heaven seal coming at her head, she was shocked. She naturally recognized that it was a legendary magic treasure from ancient times. In an instant, her 9 fox tails surged toward the Flipping Heaven seal, which was pressing down from the sky. Just ye. You. Calm, the 9 fox tails of the mystical silver fox were the strongest magic treasures in the world. As long as her fox tails blocked in front of her, most of the magic arts and magic treasures in the world would never be able to get close to her. However, in the face of the Flipping Heaven seal, the mystical silver fox did not dare to be careless. Her 9 fox tails moved out together and headed toward the Flipping Heaven seal. Suddenly, there was a loud bang. The Flipping Heaven seal collided with the 9 golden tails. One was like Mount Tai pressing down, and the other was like a heaven-defying torrent. They collided with each other and refused to give in to each other. Li Yundong saw that the mystical silver fox was entangled, and the other magic treasures and magic arts were attacking her like water. He was worried about Su Chan and refused to let the mystical silver fox suffer any harm. He immediately pinched the Mahamudra and shot out a golden Mahamudra barrier around him like a cannon, blocking these magic arts and magic treasures. Seeing this, Guangchengzi was shocked. He pointed at Li Yundong and shouted, "Who the hell are you? How dare you go against heaven? Aren't you afraid of being punished by heaven?" Li Yundong didn't pay attention to him. He gritted his teeth and pinched the Mahamudra to resist the magic arts and magic treasures attacking from all directions. At this time, Zhou Qin and Ruan Hongling also arrived with Lin Miao. They stood on the ground and looked at the earth-shattering battle in the air in fear. They didn't even dare to breathe. Zhou Qin wanted to go up and help, but in such a scene, a master of thunder retribution was even worse than a bystander. If she went up, she was afraid that she wouldn't even be able to get a box of lunch. The mystical silver fox and the Flipping Heaven seal confronted each other for a while. After all, she was a rare master in the Chinese cultivation world for thousands of years. Although the Flipping Heaven seal was powerful and psychic, it was a dead object after all. After the first round of attacks was blocked, it was difficult for it to have a follow-up. After the soul of the mystical silver fox fused with it, the Jinqi in her body flowed faster and faster, and her power grew stronger and stronger. She shouted, "Get out of my way." The 9 fox tails behind her suddenly soared, as if a golden bomb had exploded. Countless golden fox silk entangled the flipping heaven seal. Seeing that the flipping heaven seal was about to be taken away by the other party, Guangqingzi was shocked. The other golden immortals were also frightened. None of them had expected that the mystical silver fox would be so powerful. The flipping heaven seal was Guangqingzi's trump card. It could be said that whoever he wanted to hit would be hit. The reason why he was one of the 24 golden immortals was because he had the flipping heaven seal. But if Guangqingzi didn't have the flipping heaven seal, who would buy him? The Xianyuan sword had been given away, and if the flipping heaven seal was taken away, he would probably be reduced to the deputy leader of the bystander party like Shinren Huanglong. At this moment, a deafening voice suddenly sounded in the sky. "Ignorant junior, how dare you go against the heaven? Go back to where you came from." At this time, a figure appeared in the sky in an instant. This person was sitting on a lotus throne in the clouds, with 9 halos behind him, each of which was different in color. As soon as Guangqingzi and the others saw this person, they immediately looked in awe and shouted, "Ancestor, help me subdue the demons." This person was none other than old ancestor Hong Jun. Both of his hands were clenched in the air, and he slowly pulled them apart. His arms were like mud and water, as though he was pulling something. However, everyone could feel that there was an extremely terrifying power between his hands, as though he was holding up a mountain with his hands. The more ancestor Hong Jun opened his hand, the louder the rumbling sound between the heaven and earth became. Not long after that, a huge hole appeared in the cloud above his head. Black mist was swirling in the hole like a black tunnel. Ancestor Hong Jun's voice was deep. He pointed to the void opposite him and shouted, "Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. How dare you touch my world? Show yourself." Everyone heard a loud, ear-piercing sound. In an instant, another crack was torn open in front of ancestor Hong Jun. It was an oval black tunnel. Zhou Qin and the others on the ground found it familiar and were shocked. Wasn't this the gate that Wu Hua had created with the fatality connection and the leakage connection, which could connect to the spirit space? As soon as Zhou Qin reacted, she saw that the 2 black tunnels seemed to sense each other's existence. They quickly resonated and expanded. In the blink of an eye, the 2 black tunnels exploded with a bang, and the world was bright. Even the 24 golden immortals couldn't help narrowing their eyes slightly, not daring to look directly at the dazzling light. Before Li Yunyang and the mystical silver fox could react, their bodies were swept into it. Zhou Qin, Wan Hongling, and Lin Miao were also swept up by the light and disappeared in an instant. The earth-shattering battle just now quieted down in an instant. Guangqingzi looked at the scene with tears in his eyes. His flipping sky seal was swept away by the black tunnel. He wanted to do something, but ancestor Hong Jun was his grandmaster, so he didn't dare to say anything. He could only pinch his nose and accept his bad luck. Ancestor Hong Jun sat high in the clouds and said in a low voice, "This time, we didn't get off to a good start. Although there is the disturbance of the future world, King Zhou himself is too powerful, and there is also the Fox Demon. However, from now on, the Fox Demon clan is not allowed to enter the heaven realm again. They are classified as demons. All of us will kill them if we see them. The Emperor of the human world is not allowed to touch the cultivation method again. Anyone who violates it will be killed." The 24 golden immortals were awestruck and said in unison, "Yes, Your Majesty." With a wave of his sleeve, ancestor Hong Jun slowly disappeared into the clouds. After he left, the 24 golden immortals dared to take a deep breath. Originally, LV Shang thought that he would definitely be able to take King Zhou's head in today's battle, but he didn't expect such an outcome. He sighed and said, "Fellow Taoists, it seems that King Zhou's fate hasn't run out yet." After losing the flipping sky seal, Guangqingzi was extremely depressed. He sighed and said, "I'm not in the mood to care about the secular world anymore. I'll go back to Kongtong Mountain first. Take care, everyone." He was the leader of the Golden Immortals. As soon as he left, the other golden immortals also wanted to disperse and bid farewell. For a moment, only LV Shang was left in the same place. He was stunned for a while and let out a long sigh. Before he left, he looked back at the battlefield and thought to himself, where did these people come from? Could it be that the Fox Demon clan has become so powerful in the future? No, when I go back this time, I must do everything possible to discredit Daji. I must make sure that her clan will be despised by the world like her. With a cold face, LV Shang snorted and finally turned to fly in the direction of Mai. Chapter 922. 3,000 years ago, when Li Yundong and the others were involved in the War of Gods investiture, in Dongwu City 3,000 years later, the representatives of the Japanese cultivation world and the major conglomerates were walking through a dark and damp stone path. The cultivators of various sects in Japan had traveled thousands of miles to find Li Yundong, but they had been rejected twice in a row. How could they be willing to give up? Naturally, they had to find Li Yundong's whereabouts and see him in person before they were willing to go back. Otherwise, it would be strange if they didn't be laughed at after coming here with so many people and going back empty-handed. Although this was China, the home ground of these Japanese people, there were Japanese enterprises everywhere, and there were a large number of them in Dongwu City. If they wanted to find a person, although they didn't have to go to the highest heaven and earth, it was easy to find out what kind of business this person had and where he went. As the saying goes, money can communicate with the gods, and so can spiritual power. These Japanese people had money and spiritual power, and they had their own unique magic skills. After searching for a while, they found the whereabouts of Li Yundong and the others. When they arrived at Mount Tianlong, they found that there was a faint spiritual qi in Mount Tianlong, but they couldn't see where it came from. After carefully looking around, Ise Xinguang concluded that Li Yundong and the others must be in this mountain. The Japanese had built a cultivation place in the mountain many times. When the monks of Mount Koya entered the Okinohara to cultivate, they would choose to seclude themselves in a stone cave that was almost completely closed. They would fast for 3 months without eating, drinking, or defecating. In short, they would never move their buttocks. They would either become a pile of rotten meat and be carried out, or they would become a generation of divine monks and come out of seclusion with dignity. Therefore, as soon as Ise Xinguang pointed out this point, the cultivators of all sects in Japan also agreed. Although these Japanese cultivators were not top cultivators like the mystical Silver Fox or Li Yundong, they were all great experts and masters. They began to search for Li Yundong with ease. For a time, there was a gust of cold wind on Mount Tianlong, and the Shikigami and Shikigami ran around, scaring the few tourists on the mountain and at the foot of the mountain. Ise Xinguang immediately stopped those guys and scolded, "How dare you? This is China. Do you think you're in your own country?" These cultivators had no choice but to withdraw their magic and recommend Ise Chuyun to use magic alone to find the whereabouts of Li Yunyang and the others. When Ise Izumo cast spells alone, the commotion was not as big as when a group of people cast spells. It was just that she practiced the Ise Shinto, and no matter which school of Shintoism it was, their spells were always summoning the gods and summoning the ghosts. This time, they didn't come to China to fight, but to worship the gods. Naturally, they couldn't summon the gods of Shintoism. Otherwise, it would be inappropriate to see who was stronger and who was weaker. Thus, Ise Izumo naturally summoned Suzuhiko Haim, one of the Japanese ghosts. Suzuhiko Haim was one of the few ghosts in Japan that was beautiful, gorgeous, and harmless to people. At that time, Amaterasu Okami hid in the Rock of Heaven and refused to come out. It was Suzuhiko Haim who danced naked outside the cave with the divine umbrella in her hand. Only then did Amaterasu Okami come out. Not only did Suzuhiko Haim have the ability to seduce people, but she also had the ability to find people. Ise Izumo controlled Suzuhiko Haim and led everyone to the entrance of the cave at the back of the mountain where the secret chamber of the Fox Zen School was located. Suzuhiko Haim's spiritual power was not high. Apart from dancing erotically, seducing a man, or finding a few people, there was no other use for her. Japanese people were utilitarian, especially cultivators. Who would be willing to spend time to learn the magic to summon Suzuhiko Haim? It was because Ise Izumo was too beautiful. As a beauty, even though she was usually a little cold, she still had the heart of an ordinary woman who loved beauty. Naturally, she was more interested in those beautiful and dazzling things. Everyone saw that Suzuhiko Haim was holding a red oil paper umbrella with gold rims and wearing a red kimono. Her clothes were half off, and she was half naked. Her shoulders were like warm fragrant jade, and her breasts were like steamed buns. Her bare feet were as white as snow, and there were even ripples on the ground as she stepped on it. Every step she took was like dancing, and her long sleeves fluttered in the wind. Even in this dark, damp, cold, and closed stone path, there was a decadent aura that made people's hearts itch. Many of the people present were cultivators with great cultivation quotients. When they saw Suzuhiko Haim walking all the way and dancing erotically, they couldn't stand it and stared at her. Even Tanaka Misa, the heiress of the Tanaka Consortium, was also excited. She thought to herself, no wonder Amaterasu gods saw Suzuhiko Haim dancing and walking out of the Rock of Heaven. Today, she really deserves her reputation. The most important thing was that Suzuhiko Haim took off her clothes as she walked. The more she walked, the more she took off. In the end, she was almost naked, which really made everyone blush. Ise Shinguang was also very uncomfortable. He coughed dryly and said to Ise Izumo in a low voice, "Izumo, can you take this shikigami away?" Ise Izumo raised his eyebrows and looked at Ise Shinguang with a faint smile, as if he was mocking his calmness. These days, Ise Izumo had recalled the scene of Li Yunyang fighting with the mystical silver fox, and he had also devoted himself to reading a lot of Chinese Taoist cultivation classics. Although his cultivation quotient had not increased greatly, his realm had indeed improved a lot. He had seen through the beauty of the secular world. There was no beautiful woman in his eyes, only the realm of pink skeletons. But when Suzuhiko Haim finally walked to the huge stone cave, everyone's eyes suddenly opened up, and a dazzling five-colored light shone out of the stone room. Everyone took a closer look and saw a woman in a long white dress floating in the air with the azure glass mirror in her hand. The woman's long dress was fluttering, and her black hair was fluttering without any wind. She was like a fairy in heaven. Her ethereal immortal chi and beautiful face made people marvel and awe. They didn't dare to have the slightest intention of blaspheming her. Ise Shinguang and the others recognized that this woman was Fairy Zi Yuan, one of the three immortals fighting celestial foxes. At this time, Zi Yuan's body was surrounded by five-colored divine light, as if she was in an auspicious cloud, mysterious and serene. Her temperament was extremely outstanding. After the battle with Su Yi, her cultivation quotient had increased again, and her ethereal aura had become more and more heavy. At this time, she was using all her strength to cast spells, and there was a kind of awe-inspiring immortal chi all over her body. Even Suzuhiko Haim, who had attracted everyone's attention with her erotic dance, felt so inferior that she shrank into a ball and got into the oil paper umbrella she was holding when she saw the awe-inspiring Zi Yuan. The oil paper umbrella fell in mid-air, and Ise Izumo reached out to catch it. With a flip of his wrist, he put it away. When she saw Zi Yuan holding the azure glass mirror in mid-air and casting spells, she was shocked and thought to herself, is Zi Yuan fairy casting spells to destroy the mystical silver fox? All the Japanese cultivators present recognized the sky-glazed mirror, and their thoughts were similar to those of the Yun nation. Therefore, none of them dared to speak or take a deep breath. Tanaka Misa, who had come to watch the fun, also looked at Zi Yuan in shock. She couldn't believe that there was a woman in the world who could surpass Ise Izumo in terms of ethereal temperament and beauty. Tanaka Misa looked at the scene with her mouth agape. She saw a bald monk not far away from Zi Yuan. This monk was different from the monks in Japan. He didn't wear a monk's robe, nor did he wear Buddha beads, nor did he carry any magical items. The monk just pinched his fingers, closed his eyes, and moved his mouth quickly, as if he was chanting scriptures. In front of him, there was a purple-gold jade plate spinning in the air, and a huge oval halo slowly appeared above the jade plate. The halo appeared with a buzz, and in an instant, a black vortex appeared. From the vortex, an imperial jade seal flew out with a bang. The imperial jade seal hit the rock at the entrance of the stone path that had been blocked by Li Yunyang like a cannonball, shattering the heavy rock. Then, it flew far away, across the sky, and no one knew where it had flown to. This change shocked these Japanese cultivators. While they were stunned and dazzled, they saw a few more figures fly out in the blink of an eye. It was Wan Hongling and Lin Miao who flew out and fell to the ground. Then, a beautiful woman flew out. She was covered in golden light, which could not be underestimated. The Japanese cultivators recognized the woman at once. She was the human immortal Zhou Qin in the battle of 3 immortals fighting the heavenly fox. As soon as Zhou Qin landed, she looked up nervously. At this time, a huge golden fox tail quickly rushed out of the rotating black hole, like the tentacles of an octopus. This almost scared the Japanese cultivators out of their wits. Ise Izumo was so frightened that he couldn't help shouting, "Tamamonome! She's not dead!" The Japanese cultivators immediately took out their powerful magical weapons. All of them looked nervous and tragic. They knew that fighting with the mystical silver fox in such a narrow space was simply courting death. But before they could make a move, all the golden fox tails rushed out in an instant. It was the mystical silver fox with 9 golden fox tails. When the Japanese cultivators saw this, their legs almost trembled. They knew that the mystical silver fox, who had killed them in Suyi before, only had 7 golden fox tails. Now she already had 9. What did this mean? The Japanese cultivators' faces turned ashen, and their eyes were filled with despair. The mystical silver fox quickly glanced around in midair, and finally her eyes fell on Su Chan. She let out a shrill roar and immediately flew toward Su Chan's body in a flash. As soon as she came out, Li Yunyang also came out of the black hole in an instant. He shouted and chased after the figure of the mystical silver fox. He roared, "Mystical silver fox, how dare you!" As he said that, he slapped her with his palm. But after all, he was a little slower. At this time, the mystical silver fox had already entered Su Chan's body. At this time, the mystical silver fox opened her eyes and stared at Li Yundong with a pair of red eyes. Her black hair danced wildly, and the 9 golden fox tails behind her twisted like strange flames. She laughed wildly and said, "Hit me. If you have the ability, hit me. Do you dare to hit me?" Li Yundong was furious. His body trembled and he shouted loudly, "Channer, can you hear me? Don't give up. You can't be defeated by the mystical silver fox. You promised me that you would die with me." The mystical silver fox's face suddenly froze, and then her expression became distorted and she began to struggle. Little by little, she became painful and uncomfortable. When she opened her mouth again, it was Su Chan's voice. "Yundong. I feel so bad, I feel so bad." Without saying a word, Li Yundong immediately pointed at Su Chan's body with both hands. With a few puffs, he pointed at several key acupoints on Su Chan's body. Li Yundong pressed his palm on Su Chan's forehead and recited the scriptures loudly. Su Chan's body stiffened, and the painful expression on her face slowly calmed down. The 9 golden fox tails behind her also slowly retracted and finally disappeared. At this time, not only the Japanese were stunned, but Zi Yuan, who had been casting spells, was also stunned by this scene. She opened her mouth but didn't know what to say. Not only her, but Zhou Qin, Wan Hongling, and the others were also dumbfounded as they looked at Li Yundong, who was casting spells and chanting scriptures. They were speechless. On the other hand, Tanaka Misa looked at the field with her mouth agape. She couldn't help saying, What the hell is going on? This is the update on the 22nd. I'm sorry, there are too many things to do. It didn't finish until after 11:30, and I started to write. Chapter 923. The Japanese people's fear of the mystical silver fox had penetrated deep into their bones and souls. They were not fools. Although they did not immediately realize what was going on here, when they heard that Li Yundong was reciting the Surangama Sutra, how could they not understand? The great Buddha had cultivated the Surangama Sutra, the first of the 10,000 actions of the righteous Bodhisattva. This sutra was a famous classic work of Buddhism. The ancients once said, since the first Surangama, I have not read the trash books of the human world. Compared with other Buddhist classics, the biggest difference between this sutra and other Buddhist classics was that this sutra itself was one of the most powerful magic treasures of Buddhism. It was the most famous devil-breaking sutra. Most of the other Buddhist sutras talked about the principles of cultivation, the theoretical knowledge of various sects, and the understanding of the mysteries of the universe. This sutra could be called the Encyclopedia of Buddhist Cultivation. Its content included the important mysteries of a manifestation, secret, nature, and other aspects. In terms of sects, it spanned Zen sect, Pure Land sect, Tantra sect, Vinaya sect, and many other sections. It explained all the mortal saint realms in detail. Finally, it opened up the 5 devil realms and explained in detail how to break devils. It was also because of this that the Surangama Sutra became a common cultivation book that surpassed the 3 cultivation sects of Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism. Because this sutra recorded all kinds of natural laws in the Dharma ending age, and it was very thorough and clear, the Buddha also pointed out the way to deal with it in the sutra. Therefore, the Buddha said in the sutra, when the Dharma ending age is coming to an end and the Dharma is about to be destroyed, the Surangama Sutra will be the first to be destroyed, because the Surangama Sutra is the nemesis of all devils and a magic treasure to break devils. If the sutra lived in the world, the righteous Dharma would be able to stay in the world. The disciples of Buddhism would have something to rely on in their cultivation, and the devils would not be able to succeed. However, if the sutra was destroyed, there would be no one who could control the devil power. The devil would be rampant, and few living beings could cultivate without falling into the devil. Such a sutra was studied not only by Buddhist cultivators, but also by Taoist and Confucian cultivators in China. As for the cultivators of various sects in Japan, after the Surangama Sutra was introduced into their country, they regarded it as a treasure. Almost every cultivator had a copy of the Surangama Sutra in their home. Therefore, when Li Yundong recited the Surangama Sutra, these Japanese knew that Li Yundong was subduing demons. In particular, when they saw the 9-tailed fox get into Su Chan's body, they understood that the mystical silver fox had now occupied the body of Su Chan, one of the 3 immortals, and was trying to reappear in the world. This frightened the Japanese cultivators. Immediately, a Japanese cultivator roared and rushed toward Su Chan. The magic treasures in his hands smashed toward the back of Su Chan's head. At that moment, Li Yundong was reciting the first Rama Samadhi, Qin Yen Jian Xiang. Knowing the depth of the Samadhi is like a general knowing the number of his troops. Once again, the Bodhisattva has Samadhi, and all the demons and devils are incompetent and bad. For example, the Chakravarti Saint King is in charge of the soldiers and generals. Wherever he goes, he will be subdued. Just as he felt that the demon aura in Su Chan's body was beginning to be suppressed, he saw these Japanese people pouncing on him, trying to kill Su Chan to get rid of future troubles. He immediately flew into a rage. At this time, one of Li Yundong's hands was standing in front of his chest, holding the one-handed Mahamudra, and the other hand was pressed on Su Chan's forehead. He couldn't deal with these Japanese cultivators at all. But in his rage, a vertical pupil split open between his eyebrows, and his eyes spewed out a fiery gaze. The muscles on his back bulged quickly, and his bones crackled, and 4 arms grew out. These 4 arms grabbed in the air, and immediately, the Bahuang and Liuhe appeared in the hands of 2 of them. The burning thumb pot also appeared in the hands of the other 2 arms. One hand held the pot, and the other reached out to flick it. With a crisp sound, the burning thumb pot immediately spread out a white halo, which made the Japanese cultivators who had rushed up feel as if they had been pushed by a pair of invisible giant hands. Their bodies shook, and they flew back and hit the stone wall hard. These cultivators were not weak, and the lowest one was a Jinshin master. However, Li Yundong's anger was so powerful that these Japanese people were so scared that they froze in place and didn't dare to move again. Tanaka Misha stared at Li Yundong with her eyes wide open and couldn't help exclaiming in a low voice, "Wisdom King's true body, this is Wisdom King's true body." As she spoke, she saw that no one was paying attention to her, so she turned her head to look at her close friend, Ise Chuyun. She pulled Chuyun's arm and whispered, "This Li Yundong is really the reincarnation of Wisdom King." Of course, Ise Izumo knew this. She looked at Li Yunyang in horror and didn't care to talk to Tanaka Misa. She said loudly, "Wisdom King, are you going to protect this demon fox?" The cultivators of the other sects in Japan also exclaimed, "Your Highness, do you want the tragedy to repeat itself? Your Highness, you can't be soft-hearted. Your Highness, if you can't do it, please let us do it." These Japanese people were begging. Some of them even knelt on the ground and kowtowed like pounding garlic, crying loudly. Zi Yuan, who was in midair, also came to her senses at this time. She saw that Li Yundong was using the Surangama Sutra to try to suppress the mystical silver fox in Su Chan's body, but these Japanese people were making Li Yundong's anger grow stronger and stronger. She was shocked and couldn't help but be anxious. Zi Yuan was familiar with the Buddhist scriptures, so she naturally knew that the current situation was exactly the evil appearance mentioned in the Surangama Sutra. The scripture said, "Study the extreme with this heart. See the good knowledge, change the body. Choose less all kinds of changes for no reason. This evil heart contains evil spirits. Or let the sky devil enter one's heart." There is no reason to say it, but it is clear and wonderful. It is not the holy proof. If you don't do it, the devil will stop. If you do it, you will be subjected to evil spirits. It referred to the situation in front of them. If they wanted to break such a dharma, the person's heart must be pure and unhindered. There must be no idiocy, no likes and dislikes, no killing intent, no anger, no greed, no sorrow or joy. Once their emotions were stirred, they would be taken advantage of by the sky devil. If these Japanese people were to provoke Li Yundong like this, it would be counterproductive. Zi Yuan immediately moved and stood in front of Li Yundong. She turned her head and said to Li Yundong, "We are here. You can focus on the practice." When Li Yundong saw her appear in front of him, he immediately felt relieved. The vertical eye between his eyebrows slowly closed, and his angry expression gradually calmed down. The hand behind his back also retracted, and the powerful magical weapon floated in the air, automatically protecting him. The Japanese cultivators saw Zi Yuan standing in front of them. Although they were respectful, the mystical silver fox was related to the life and death of the Japanese cultivation world. How could they dare to be careless? At that moment, a Japanese cultivator said loudly, "Zi Yuan Fairy, you are blocking our way. Are you also going to protect the mystical silver fox?" Zi Yuan was not surprised. She said in a deep voice, "Now the outcome has not been decided. We don't even know whether she is a saint or a devil. How can we protect her?" As soon as she finished speaking, a Japanese cultivator said anxiously, "What if she loses? Who can control her? If His Highness Wisdom King doesn't make a move now, he will regret it in the future." As soon as this was said, the Japanese cultivators suddenly became excited. "Yes, that's right. If we don't make a move now, there will be a big disaster in the future. Sacrificing this woman in exchange for peace and happiness in the world, I think His Highness Wisdom King can understand this truth. Buddha also said that if I don't go to hell, who will go to hell?" Facing the criticism of so many cultivators, Zi Yuan was under great pressure. She gritted her teeth and was about to speak, but she heard Zhou Qin shout angrily, "Bullshit! What bullshit? If I don't go to hell, who will go to hell? Since you've said so, why don't you go to hell and have a look first?" The Japanese cultivator who had spoken was also very straightforward. He knelt on the ground, pulled open his clothes, and revealed his abdomen. He glared at Zhou Qin and said, "If my life can be exchanged for His Highness Wisdom King to show his bodhisattva's kindness with thunderous means, why should I cherish my life? Everyone, I'll go first." After that, he shouted loudly and cut his abdomen with his palm like a knife. The Japanese cultivators on the side were all shocked. Ise Shinguang hurriedly stopped him and advised, "Sumitomo, calm down. You can't do this." In the end, Sumitomo was a little faster. Although he was stopped by the cultivators next to him, he still pierced his belly with his fingers, and blood flowed out. The people next to him dragged him to the back to treat his wounds. He still shouted at Li Yunyang loudly, "Your Highness, Wisdom King, you have to show your bodhisattva's kindness with thunderous means. She is a demon, and you are a human. It is your duty to subdue demons." At this time, many Japanese cultivators couldn't help but kneel down together and say loudly, "His Highness Wisdom King, please think twice. Your Highness, what's so pitiful about this demoness? Could it be that the lives of so many of us aren't worth her life? Even if we can't, what about the people in the world? When the nine-tailed celestial fox descends, there will be a great disaster. Your Highness, be careful." These people had come to China to pay homage to the immovable Wisdom King. Who knew that they would see such a terrifying scene? They couldn't sit still. Even Ise Shinguang knelt down and begged bitterly, "Wisdom King, she is no longer the woman you love. Open your eyes and take a look." Although Zhou Qin and Zi Yuan were both lightning retribution masters, there were also many lightning retribution masters among these Japanese. Moreover, with so many people shouting at the same time, the momentum was really great. The two of them were under great pressure, and a thin layer of sweat appeared on their foreheads. The two of them looked at each other and were about to speak when they suddenly heard Li Yundong's low and slow voice say, "Don't say any more. The lives of all the people in the world added together are not as valuable as her life. If any of you say that killing her to save the world again, I will kill you first." These words made the hearts of these Japanese fall to the bottom. They felt that they had come in high spirits, but they had ended up in such a situation. Their enthusiasm was simply cold to the bottom. The ancients said, "Those who are not of our race must have a different heart." This meant that when different groups encountered a crisis, because of different backgrounds, different status, and different interests, the results would lead to different ways of thinking and acting. These Japanese cultivators naturally didn't know the relationship between Li Yundong and Su Chan. They only felt that sacrificing Su Chan, a woman, to save the world was a worthwhile thing, but the wise king insisted on going his own way. When these Japanese heard Li Yundong's words, they looked at each other and didn't say anything more. They turned around and left in silence. Tanaka Misa looked at Ise Chuyun, who had an ugly expression on his face, and followed her out. As she walked, she looked back and asked in a low voice, "What's wrong? Are we going back?" Ise Chuyun was silent for a long time before he said slowly, "A great disaster is coming. What else can we do but leave?" When Zi Yuan, Zhou Qin, and the others saw the Japanese retreating, they all looked at Li Yundong worriedly and said, "What should we do? These Japanese will definitely not let it go." Li Yundong's face was cold and he said in a deep voice, "Let them come." Wu Hua, who had been silent and watching coldly, suddenly chanted the name of Buddha and said, "Amitabha, very good." After that, he laughed and slowly walked out of the stone exit that had been created by the flipping sky seal. After a while, he disappeared. Chapter 924. After the Japanese cultivators left the Tianlong mountain, they were all silent. Compared with their previous enthusiasm, they were more interested in reading books. Xuanzi said that human nature was evil, and he pointed out that people were born greedy and selfish. This nature did not differ because of the country, race, gender, and age. Although the Japanese cultivators praised Li Jiandong highly, once they encountered a real crisis and needed to make a choice, the nature of human beings and the interests of their respective camps would be different. After they got down from Mount Tianlong, a monk of the Tiantai sect sighed and said, the wise king is determined to go his own way. What should we do? If he really succeeds in suppressing the mystical silver fox, it's fine. But what if he fails? As soon as he said this, the others all said, yes, the fate of our Japanese cultivation world is completely in the hands of the wise king. Our lives are not a concern, but listen to me, if the wise king fails and the mystical silver fox returns to her heyday, our Japanese cultivation world will definitely face a disaster. At that time, even if we are lucky enough to go to the earth or the sky, how can we face the ancestors of all generations? This is the death of our Japanese cultivation world. These Japanese cultivators were all famous figures in Japan. Any one of them would be highly sought after when they went out. At this time, they were standing at the foot of this unknown Mount Tianlong, sighing and frowning, as if the end of the world was coming in the next second. If it was an ordinary person, they wouldn't have been so worried. Without saying a word, they would have rushed over with their sabers, regardless of whether the other party agreed or not. However, this person was Li Jiandong, and he was also the reincarnated Wisdom King. He had defeated the Japanese cultivation world twice in a row, and he had defeated the mystical silver fox in front of almost all the Japanese cultivators. He was a powerful master. In the past, the Japanese cultivation world didn't even pay attention to Wang Yuanshan. However, after the battle with Su Yi, the Japanese cultivation world was shocked by the deep foundation of the Chinese cultivation world. They were all shocked and recognized Wang Yuanshan as the #1 master of the Chinese Jingyi school and the master of cultivation. Zhou Fachang was recognized as the #1 master of the Chinese Chuanjin sect and the great master of cultivation. At the same time, they recognized Li Jiandong's strength as the #1 master of China and the fighting heavenly master. In Japan, a country with many cultivation sects, it was extremely rare to be recognized like this without writing a book. Although the Japanese martial arts world was inherited from China, the turmoil in the early days of the founding of New China led to the death of a large number of masters in the turmoil. Among them, the tragedy of Shueding, the Xingyi Grandmaster, caused a large number of martial arts masters to flee. The last disciple of Li Shuwen, Lu Yunxiao, led the way to Taiwan. Such a situation had led to a great decline in the strength of the Chinese martial arts world, so much so that the Japanese martial arts world once thought that there were no actual combat skills in the Chinese martial arts world, because most of the actual combat experts had been raised and had become toothless tigers. The martial artists with actual combat ability had all left for other countries. In the 1980s, Matsuda Takashi, a famous Japanese martial arts scholar, came to China for martial arts exchange. After returning to China, he and the cartoonist Fujiwara Yoshihide created the cartoon, Fist, that caused a sensation in Japan. The Japanese cartoon industry was so developed that ordinary people couldn't imagine it. As soon as this extremely professional cartoon was published, it immediately caused a great success and sensation, especially attracted the attention of the Japanese martial arts world. This cartoon concentrated on the fighting methods and fighting skills of China's Bajikwan. In the cartoon, Bajikwan was praised as the first boxing method in China. Therefore, there was a saying in Japan that, the only boxing method in China with actual combat power is Bajikwan, that spread like wildfire. The martial arts world and the cultivation world were closely related, and the relationship between the two was inseparable. This was the same in both China and Japan. In this era of extremely developed consultation, if one wanted to become famous, especially to be recognized by almost all cultivators, it was extremely important to write a book and establish a theory. In Japan, even if a person had the strength and qualifications of a great master, no one would write a book and promote him. No matter how powerful he was, the Japanese would not recognize him. However, no one wrote a book for Li Yundong at all, but he was recognized by the entire Japanese cultivation world. From this matter, it could be seen that the Japanese cultivation world's reverence for Li Yundong had reached an extreme. It was because of this reverence that they were in so much pain now. It was as if they had gone through all kinds of hardships to think that they could cozy up to the reincarnated Wisdom King, only to find out in the end that this guy turned out to be the hidden big boss, who was actually their enemy. This time, these Japanese were really scared out of their wits. Even Ise Chumo and Ise Shenko, two cultivators who had always admired and respected Li Yundong, couldn't help but be silent. It was one thing to admire and respect a person, but it was another thing if that person threatened their own interests or even their own safety. Ise Shenko didn't have the slightest carelessness on his face. His face was full of worry. He sighed and said, "Everyone, Wisdom King's behavior is indeed a little impulsive, but we can't just sit back and wait for death." Although Ise Shenko admired Li Yundong very much, he was now one of the leaders of the Japanese cultivation world and the great priest of Ise Shinto. His actions, words, and thoughts naturally had to be considered from the perspective of Ise Shinto and the Japanese cultivation world. Personal factors had to be put aside. It could even be said that if his parents threatened the safety of the Japanese cultivation world, he would probably only be able to grit his teeth and kill his family in the name of righteousness. This was the saying that one's position determined one's brain, and one's position determined one's thinking. When the other Japanese cultivators heard Ise Shenko's words, they couldn't help but ask, "Xinguangjun, do you have any good ideas?" F***ck, the immovable Wisdom King is so powerful and stubborn. We want to persuade him to stop, but he doesn't care about us and we can't beat him. What can we do? Ise Shenko thought for a moment and said with a serious expression, "Everyone, we don't want to be enemies with Wisdom King, but what he is doing now has threatened the safety of the Japanese cultivation world and even the Chinese cultivation world. I believe that even the cultivators of other sects in the Chinese cultivation world will not let Wisdom King act so stubbornly." When the other cultivators heard this, they were suddenly enlightened and overjoyed. Yes, it's a good idea to use China to control China. Ise Chumo glanced at Ise Shenko with a worried expression and said in a low voice, "Xinguangjun, will the Chinese cultivators think that we have other plans?" Ise Shenko smiled bitterly and said, "In the face of a great enemy, how can there be any difference between countries and sects? I don't believe that the cultivators of the Chinese cultivation world will watch the reincarnated Wisdom King gamble with the life and death of the Chinese cultivation world and the Japanese cultivation world. As the saying goes, how can others sleep peacefully on the side of the bed?" No one was willing to put their lives in the hands of others, even if that person had a good reputation and was powerful. But when people encountered a problem of life and death, they couldn't help but think, what if his temperament changed greatly and he changed from a good person to a bad person? What if the reincarnated Wisdom King failed and the mystical silver fox won? It was better to hold one's own life in one's own hands. Ise Shenko's words made the cultivators of all sects in Japan feel relieved and they all returned home. Although Tanaka Misha had been with Ise Chumo for a long time and knew some things about the cultivation world, she was not as aware of the harm in this matter as other cultivators. Moreover, she was in the prime of her life. Most girls at this age were in love. Just now, she had seen Li Yundong's unparalleled spirit and momentum, and he had protected Su Chan at all costs. She couldn't help but feel a little emotional in her heart. On the way back home, she said to Ise Chumo, "Li Yundong is a real hero at first glance. Do you really want to deal with such a hero?" Ise Chumo's expression showed a rare trace of helplessness and tiredness. She leaned against the window of the plane and looked at the vast sea of clouds below. She said softly, "Misha. When I first saw him, I also felt that he must be a great hero among the Chinese cultivators. In the future, he will definitely have earth-shattering cultivation. But, even if he is a great hero, he can't gamble with the lives of all the people in the world." Ise Chumo seemed to think of the terrifying and bloody scene of the battle in Susano. There was a faint trace of fear in her eyes. She said, "The mystical silver fox has now restored her nine-tailed true body. If she is allowed to occupy the body of Fox Fairy Su Chan, I'm afraid that even the reincarnation of Wisdom King won't be able to stop her. Moreover, Wisdom King has come to Japan with Fox Fairy Su Chan several times. The two of them are intimate. Obviously, they are a couple. If the mystical silver fox really occupies this body in the future, I'm afraid that Wisdom King won't be able to do it at all. Tanaka Misha didn't say anything. Although she admired Li Yundong, if she had to pay with her life, it would be better to decline. She thought for a moment and said, then when we go back, are we going to encourage other sects in the Chinese cultivation world to deal with the reincarnation of Wisdom King with us? Ise Chimo sighed, shook his head, and said, our Japanese cultivation world can't even defeat the nine-tailed celestial fox who is not in her peak state. How can we defeat the reincarnation of Wisdom King who defeated the mystical silver fox? An expert like the revered Wisdom King is not someone we can deal with. The only thing we can do is to unite with the Chinese cultivation sects and put pressure on Wisdom King together. I hope that he will be afraid under the heavy pressure and change his mind. After Tanaka Misa heard this, her eyes looked out of the window, lost in thought. As a woman, as a beautiful woman who yearned for love, how she hoped that there would be a man in this world who would protect and love her without reservation. But was there really a man in the world who could risk the pressure and risk of going against everyone in the world to protect a woman? Tanaka Misha fell silent. She thought to herself, once the Chinese and Japanese cultivation world join hands to put pressure on Li Yundong, can he withstand it? In the face of the criticism and pressure of the whole cultivation world, if Li Yundong doesn't put his family before his family, I'm afraid that everything he has done in the past will disappear. He will become the public enemy of the cultivation world. His reputation will be ruined, and he may even be infamous for thousands of years. Faced with such pressure, what would he choose? Chapter 925. Jiangsu City, Jiangxi Province. Wang Zhenyuan stood in front of the cold and cheerless Chongjin Palace with his hands behind his back. He silently looked at the gate tower and the archway, which were overgrown with weeds. He stretched out his hand and stroked the plaque engraved with words on the door. As soon as he touched it, the paint on it fell off, revealing the cracked and dry wooden board inside. It gave off an ancient feeling of vicissitudes and desolation. Wang Zhenyuan stared at the wooden board with a complicated look in his eyes. His fingers gently stroked the cracks on it without saying a word. Yu Tian, who was at the side, looked at him and asked cautiously, Sect Master Wan, I used to think that your external alchemy sect was rich and powerful, and the ancestral court would definitely have a lot of followers. I didn't expect. He didn't dare to continue. Wang Zhenyuan glanced at him and smiled slightly. It's incredible to see the ancestral court of our external alchemy sect decline like this, right? Yu Tian smiled awkwardly and didn't answer. Wang Zhenyuan sighed softly and said, since ancient times, the disputes in Jianghu in the cultivation world have never stopped. Whether it was the Tang, Song, Yuan, Ming, or Qing dynasty, ancient times, or modern times, it has never changed. On the surface, the Zhenyi school is the strongest in the Chinese cultivation world, and the Chuanjin sect is fighting with the other 5 sections. But in fact, these sects are on guard against each other. The Niden sect is guarding against the external alchemy sect, and the sects in the north are hostile to the sects in the south. Hey, the battle between the north and the south, as well as the internal and external conflicts, is getting fiercer and fiercer. Although the sects such as the Zhenyi school and the Chuanjin sect usually fight fiercely, when it comes to dealing with our external alchemy sect, they can reach a consensus and deal with us together. If the Zhenyi school and the Chuanjin sect join forces, no matter how powerful we are, we will have to avoid them for the time being. Wang Zhenyuan shook his head and said in a deep voice, under the suppression of the Niden sect, our external alchemy sect looks very glorious, but in fact, if there are really good cultivators who want to cultivate, they will go to Mount Longhu or Mount Wudong. They will either join the Zhenyi school or the Chuanjin sect. How could anyone join our Gazao sect? Yu Tian was deeply moved as he listened. Although he had never had any ambition, his wife often wanted to revitalize the Penglai sect. It was just that the time and conditions were not ripe, so she did not show it. However, Yu Tian lived with her every day, and under the influence of what he saw and heard, he began to pay more attention to these things. Yu Tian said with emotion, I thought that only our Penglai sect would be excluded. That's why we have such difficulties. I didn't expect that the leading sect of external alchemy would also be suppressed like this. Wang Jinyuan chuckled. Jinren, you must be joking. Your Penglai sect has the advantage of the right time and the right place. There are many people in China who don't know about the Penglai sect. But there are very few people who don't know Mount Penglai. Wang Jinyuan raised his eyes and said with emotion, it's not like our Mount Gazao. After the most glorious period passed, there was no chance for us to make a comeback. Yu Tian glanced at Wang Jinyuan and said, Master Wan, I believe that one day, the Gazao sect will definitely rise again under your leadership. Wang Jinyuan smiled, glanced at Yu Tian, and said, thanks to your auspicious words, I also believe that such a day will come. Moreover, now the opportunity has come. It's not only an opportunity for me, but also for you, Jinren. Yu Tian had not left his house these days. He had been cultivating all day, and he almost didn't pay attention to the outside world. He only read the cultivation book. He didn't know that Lu Yi had been killed by Wang Jinyuan, nor did he know what earth-shattering event had happened in the cultivation world. Yu Tian looked at Wang Jinyuan strangely and asked, what do you mean by that, Master Wan? Wang Jinyuan chuckled and said, Jinren, come down the mountain with me. Soon, you will have a chance to show off. As long as you seize this opportunity, you will definitely get your revenge. Moreover, the reputation of the Penglai sect will also soar because of what you have done. Yu Tian immediately clenched his fists and his breathing became rapid. Master Wan, are you going to help me get revenge? Wang Jinyuan smiled and said, yes, I thought that your hope of revenge in this life was slim, but I didn't expect that this opportunity would come so soon and so suddenly. Yu Youtian's eyes were filled with a morbid and ecstasy. Master Wan, can you defeat Li Yunyang? Wang Jinyuan laughed and said, defeat the reincarnated Wisdom King? Are you kidding me? But, Jinren, you have to remember that the one with the biggest fist in the world will not be the one who laughs in the end. There is another kind of power in this world that you have not seen, but I believe that you will soon be able to see it. Wang Jinyuan put his hands behind his back and looked at the sky with a sigh. He murmured softly, you have to remember that if you want to become stronger, you have to keep stepping on the corpses of others to climb up. Yu Tian looked at Wang Jinyuan from the side. Although he was confused, his eyes became more and more excited. At the same time, in the Qingqing sect of Mount Qingcheng. On this day, Zhang Tongtian, the leader of the Qingqing sect, was explaining the cultivation method to the disciples in the hall of the Laojun Pavilion. Just as he was talking about the mystery, he heard a voice like a broken gong shouting loudly. Senior brother leader, senior brother leader. Zhang Huashui, who was known as Fierce Zhang Fei in the cultivation world, shouted loudly before entering the Laojun Pavilion. Zhang Tongtian frowned, raised his eyes, and looked outside unhappily. He turned to the disciple next to him and said kindly, you can go down first. When you go back, try to understand the realm I just mentioned. The disciples of the Qingqing sect got up and left one after another. When they walked to the door, they happened to see Zhang Huashui rushing in. They bowed to him one by one, called him Shu, and then filed out. Zhang Tongtian frowned at Zhang Huashui and said in a deep voice, can't you see that I'm in class? What has caused such a ruckus? Zhang Huashui had fought a fierce battle with Takahashi Shota on Mount Longhu. After his eyes were injured, there was a scar on them. At this time, his eyes looked always red, as if he was going to be furious at any time. He looked very frightening. After Zhang Huashui rushed into the hall of the pavilion, he looked around first, then grabbed a teapot on the chopping board and took a sip. Zhang Tongtian quickly shouted, hey, that's the tea for Taishang Laojun. Zhang Huashui didn't hear him clearly. He wiped his mouth and looked at Zhang Tongtian with bulging eyes. Shixiang, what did you just say? Zhang Tongtian sighed and shook his head. Forget it. Put down the teapot. Tell me, what's the matter? Zhang Huashui put down the teapot and said with some excitement and mystery, Shixiang, do you know what I just heard? Zhang Tongtian said unhappily, I don't have the mind-reading ability, nor do I have the fate-reading ability or the leak-reading ability. How could I know these things? Zhang Huashui slapped his thigh and said, damn it, Li Wudi really deserves it. He didn't want to be the reincarnated wisdom king, but he had to hang out with those seductive foxes. Now he's finally caused big trouble. He's in big trouble. Zhang Tongtian was a little surprised and asked, what happened? Modern society was an information society, and it was also a network society. Top masters like Li Jiandong didn't like to use modern communication tools on the internet, but that didn't mean that others didn't like it. It was impossible that no one in the cultivation world didn't know that the Japanese cultivation masters had come to China in a group. They had come in high spirits and returned in disappointment. Naturally, it was impossible that no one didn't know about it. In addition, after the Japanese cultivation world returned, they immediately sent messengers to contact the responsible leaders of the various sects in China from all directions, telling them about the current critical situation. They also hoped that the Chinese cultivation world would join forces with them to stop the reincarnated wisdom king from acting on his own, forcing him to change his mind and put justice before family. Such a shocking event had just spread in a sect. In just a few minutes, almost the entire cultivation world knew about it. Only some cultivators who lived in seclusion were still at a loss. After hearing Zhang Huashui's words, Zhang Tongtian immediately showed a vigilant look and said, why are you so excited? Aren't you afraid that this is a trick of the Japanese? They want to use us to make us destroy ourselves. Jinren Li is a rare genius in our Chinese cultivation world in 100 years. He is also a great master who has made our Chinese cultivation world proud. You have to control yourself. Don't be used by the Japanese. Did you forget the pain when the wound on your eye healed? Zhang Huashui was so angry that he pointed at the wound on his eye and said in Sichuan dialect, Zhang Men Shixiang, do you think Laozi is a scatterer? If these Japanese bastards dare to appear in front of me, I'll strangle them to death with my hands. If 2 of them come, I'll strangle them to death. However, Shixiang, you haven't forgotten that the Fox Zen school still owes us dozens of lives, have you? This is a blood feud. Zhang Huashui paced back and forth impatiently and angrily. He pointed to the door and said, Li Yundong beat those Japanese sons of bitches in Mount Longhu. He is indeed. Zhang Huashui gave him a thumbs up and said with admiration, but soon he said with a face full of indignation, but even if he is a hero, he can't mess around, right? He has to give us an explanation, right? Who can we find to avenge the dozens of lives of our Qingqing sect? In the end, it still fell on Li Yundong. Shixiang, don't tell me that you don't want to take revenge on Li Yundong just because he is a hero? Zhang Tongtian listened silently. He let out a long sigh and said, now there is no evidence and the truth is unknown. It's not good to rashly put the blame on Li Yundong. Zhang Huashui was so anxious that he stamped his feet. Shixiang, you're really muddle-headed. This must have been done by the people of the Fox Zen school. Li Yundong is the leader of the Fox Zen school. If we don't look for him, who else can we look for? At least, you should ask him to give us an explanation so that we can give an explanation to the families of those disciples who died. Zhang Tongtian turned to look at Zhang Huashui and said, but now that the Japanese are involved, won't it be a little too much to kick them when they are down? Zhang Huashui said angrily, what do you mean by kicking them when they are down? It's clear that Li Yundong is greedy and lecherous. He has indeed done meritorious service to our Chinese cultivation world before, but this is a different matter. Can he not give us an explanation if he has done us a favor? Can he play around with the lives of the cultivators in the world and the fate of the Chinese cultivation world just because he has done us a favor? Zhang Tongtian's face darkened. After thinking for a long time, he slowly stood up and asked, what do the Zhengyi school and the Chuanjin dragon sect think? Zhang Huashui stamped his feet and said, they have already agreed to intervene. They are just waiting for our Qingqing sect. Shixiang, if you don't go, I will take my own people. Zhang Tongtian's face darkened and he shouted, nonsense. Who said I won't go? Zhang Huashui was overjoyed. Shixiang, do you agree to go? Zhang Tongtian glared at him and said, if I don't go, who will take care of you? Although Zhang Huashui had been scolded, he was not angry. He touched his forehead and laughed. At this time, the Chinese cultivation world was surging in the dark, and the undercurrents were surging. In the distant Japanese cultivation world, an unprecedentedly huge wave was brewing. It wouldn't take long for these two torrents to converge and press down on Li Yunyang like an avalanche. Chapter 926. Wakayama Prefecture, Japan, Mount Koya, Immovable Hall. When Li Yunyang took away the real body of Wisdom King in Mount Koya, it caused a huge phenomenon. In this era of extremely developed information and everyone had a camera phone, such a phenomenon was immediately photographed by many locals and tourists, uploaded to the internet at the first time, and then quickly spread. The miracle of Wisdom King's manifestation instantly ignited the fanaticism of the Japanese people for Mount Koya. In the past few days, the number of believers of Jinyin Tantrism had increased sharply, and there were even more Japanese Buddhists who came to Mount Koya to pay homage to the immovable Wisdom King. The monk in charge of selling tickets counted the money every day until his hands were cramping. Kaisai Hikaryuni didn't expect that they would lose the real body of Wisdom King, but they would gain great prestige and benefits. It could be said that they had lost the east corner and gained the mulberry elm. He was so happy that he couldn't close his mouth. But before he was happy for a long time, a shocking piece of bad news almost made him faint on the spot. Your Excellency, we can't hesitate any longer. Now the fate of the Japanese cultivation world is all in your hands. There were a lot of people kneeling on the tatami in the immovable hall. The one who spoke was the new great monk of the Tiantai sect. His name was Tamura Ichiko. Behind him were the cultivation leaders of various sects in Japan. Kaisai Hikaryuni closed his eyes and kept silent with a calm face. He also knew what had happened recently, but Jinyin Tantrism was the sect that didn't want to get involved the most. It was not that they were not afraid of death, but that they didn't want to destroy the good situation in front of them. Mount Koya was extremely popular because of the Wisdom King's manifestation. Such a situation could be said to be rare in 100 years. It was an extremely rare opportunity, and it was also a great opportunity for the power of Jinyin Tantrism to expand. But if they got involved at this time, it would be like slapping themselves in the face. Mount Koya was the Taoist field of the immovable Wisdom King, and they had obtained great benefits and fame because of the immovable Wisdom King. But now they had to deal with the reincarnated Wisdom King. What was going on? Was he slapping himself in the face? But if he didn't go, the consequences would be unimaginable. Kaisai Hikaryuni originally thought that he could get away with it by pretending to be stupid, but he didn't expect that the other cultivation sects would not let go of Jinyin Tantrism. They immediately joined forces and went to Mount Koya Hikaryuni to petition. The word petition sounded nice, but in fact, it was to force Jinyin Tantrism's sect to take action. Otherwise, if they had a conflict with the reincarnated Wisdom Hikaryuni, they would definitely cause the other sects to suffer huge losses. If Jinyin Tantrism did not participate, it was very likely that all the sects would suffer heavy losses. Only their sect would be intact, and there would be a situation where Jinyin Tantrism would dominate the cultivation world in the future. The Chinese loved infighting, but the Japanese weren't any better. After thinking about it, these Japanese cultivation sects realized that they had all offended the reincarnated Wisdom King. Jinyin Tantrism wanted to hide and be a good person. How could it be so easy? No, come with us. If you don't, we'll beat you into a horseback deer. Therefore, when so many cultivators from different sects came together, Kaisai Hikaryuni felt as if he was carrying Mount Tai on his shoulder and couldn't even straighten up his back. However, Kaisai Hikaryuni's cultivation quotient was quite high. He was in pain, but he didn't show any expression on his face. He thought to himself, if I go, the previous prosperity will be in vain. But if I don't go, I'm afraid that Mount Koya will be covered with blood today. Kaisai Hikariuni closed his eyes and chanted Buddhist scriptures in a low voice with a solemn look. After thinking for a long time, he finally thought of the most critical point. The reincarnated Wisdom King is still far away from us, but now these people are in front of us. If I don't agree, there will be a bloody case immediately. Kaisai Hikariuni knew that the current Japanese cultivation world could no longer be judged by common sense. In order to deal with Li Yunyang, a top expert, all the sects had gone all out. There was a kind of, if I can't live, you can't live either, attitude. Kaisai Hikariuni thought for a long time in front of everyone, then opened his eyes slightly and said slowly, but the reincarnated Wisdom King is so powerful, and he has obtained the true body of Wisdom King. I'm afraid that we can't beat him even if we work together. Tamura Hikariuni seemed to have expected him to say this. He immediately said, Your Excellency, we are indeed no match for Wisdom King, but there is one person in the world who can defeat Wisdom King. Kaisai Hikariuni was moved and asked, Oh? Who is it? Is there such a person in the world? Tamura Hikariuni said firmly, Buddha Tathagata. Kaisai Hikariuni was stunned. He was tongue-tied and couldn't say anything for a long time. This sentence sounded very reasonable, but in fact, it was a little ridiculous. The immovable Wisdom King was the incarnation of the angry thoughts of Buddha, and his power came from Buddha. The relationship between the two was a bit similar to the relationship between a party and an army. Buddha could mobilize Wisdom King, but Wisdom King could not mobilize Buddha. This was the principle of, the party directs the gun. The immovable Wisdom King was the best in the world when fighting. When he was really ruthless, no one was his opponent. But if there was really a role that could restrain the immovable Wisdom King, it would be Buddha Tathagata. But could Buddha Tathagata be seen casually? For thousands of years, countless monks had knocked on wooden fish all their lives and recited Buddhist scriptures that could fill the sea, but no one had ever seen Buddha Tathagata. Kaisai Hikariuni couldn't believe his ears. These guys wanted to find Buddha Tathagata to deal with Wisdom King? How could they find him? Tamura Hikariuni knew that Kaisai Hikariuni had such a question. He said very seriously, Your Excellency, have you forgotten the 10,000 Buddha worshipping formation? Kaisai Hikariuni's face changed and he said in surprise, The 10,000 Buddha worshipping formation? That's impossible. We don't have enough manpower. The 10,000 Buddha worshipping formation was just a huge magic formation that existed in the Buddhist cultivation world in theory. The monk who created the magic formation and the age of the monk had been unknown for a long time. However, this magic formation was created by some Buddhist cultivators with a strong sense of suffering. It was a super large magic formation used to summon Buddha Tathagata. This magic formation used the spiritual power and junshi of many eminent monks as the medium, and the magic formation as the cauldron. It merged the power of many eminent monks into one, and created a force equivalent to the power of a golden immortal. It was used to break through the barrier between the human world and the heaven realm, so that their voices could be directly transmitted to Buddha Tathagata. But how could it be easy to break through the barrier between the human world and the heaven realm? Since this magic formation was created, no one had used it yet because the requirements of this magic formation were too harsh. Just the host of the core magic formation alone needed 20 Thunder Retribution Masters, 200 Jinshin Masters were needed to act as a link in the middle, and at least 15,000 Yang Spirit Masters were needed to act as a link. Such a huge number was enough to make any Buddhist cultivation sect give up on the formation and give up on it. Kaisai Hikariuni knew that throughout the history of China and Japan, no matter which sect, it was absolutely impossible for so many masters to gather together in the same era. However, after hearing this, Tamura Ichikariuni smiled and said, Your Excellency, the masters of Shintoism are also willing to help. Moreover, we have also reached an agreement with the eminent monks of the Chinese cultivation world. They agree to join the 10,000 Buddha worshipping formation. We have almost gathered the number of people in this magic formation. As long as Jinyan Tantrism agrees to join, it will be a matter of course. After hearing this, Kaisai Hikaryuni was extremely shocked. He knew that if the cultivation world of China and Japan were added together, it would indeed be possible to gather so many cultivation masters. However, he did not expect that the cultivation world of China and Japan would be able to join hands at this critical juncture. He did not expect that the Buddhist sects and the Shintoism sects, which had always been at odds with each other, could also join hands. This was really incredible. At this time, Kaisai Hikaryuni knew that he had no way out. If he continued to shirk and hesitate, he would be the public enemy and traitor of the Japanese cultivation world. He would lose his reputation in an instant, and even his body and soul might be destroyed. He didn't dare to hesitate. He immediately chanted the name of Buddha and said with emotion, "It turns out that you have done such a big thing quietly. I'm ashamed. I'm still in the dark." Tamura Ichikaryuni said with a smile, "Your Excellency, do you agree?" Kaisai Hikaryuni bent down and said to the many cultivators, "Everyone, let's go forward together." Hearing this, everyone was overjoyed and kowtowed in return. "You're too polite, great monk." At this point, the cultivation world of Japan had become unprecedentedly unified. A huge cultivation machine was working like never before. All the sects had abandoned their prejudices and disagreements. The originally scattered forces had gathered together and aimed at one goal. The last time the Japanese cultivation world had united was during the war of aggression against China. However, at that time, they had to deal with an ancient and declining Chinese cultivation world. This time, they were going to deal with a single individual, the reincarnated Wisdom King. In the distant Mount Tianlong of Dongwu City, Li Yundong's fingers were flying, pinching the Wisdom King Dharma Mudra and reciting the Surangama Sutra. With a serious expression, he was suppressing demons and eliminating evil spirits. For Su Chan Zhou Qin looked at Li Yundong worriedly. She knew that Li Yundong had not eaten or drunk for 2 whole days. If this went on, she didn't know when it would end. Zhou Qin was looking at Li Yundong worriedly. Suddenly, she heard a fragrant wind coming from the side. She turned her head and saw Zi Yuan flying in from outside. After the flipping sky seal opened up the stone room, the originally turbid and airtight stone room also became bright and ventilated. There was a delicate fragrance coming from Zi Yuan's body. When she walked in from the stone cave with the wind outside, it was really like the fragrance of orchids, making people feel relaxed and happy. Zi Yuan glanced at Zhou Qin and asked in a low voice, "Is he still like this?" Zhou Qin nodded worriedly and said softly, "Zi Yuan, do you think Su Chan will get better?" Zi Yuan sighed and said, "I don't know. I hope Li Yundong can succeed. But what I'm most worried about now is that the cultivators of other sects will come to stop him after they get the news." Zhou Qin snorted coldly. "Them? What right do they have to meddle in our business?" Zi Yuan shook her head and said in a low voice, "The tallest tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. Li Yundong's cultivation is close to the peak. What I'm afraid of is not the cultivators of the mortal world, but..." As she said this, she quietly pointed to the sky. Zhou Qin's eyes suddenly widened. Just as she was about to continue speaking, a figure suddenly rushed in like a gust of wind. It was Ruan Hongling. Ruan Hongling's pretty face was pale, and she said breathlessly, "Shiji Zi Yuan, there are a lot of people at the foot of the mountain." As soon as she finished speaking, Lin Miao also walked in quickly. She looked shocked and said to Zhou Qin, "Eldest Shiji, go out and have a look." Zhou Qin and Zi Yuan looked at each other and nodded together. They said in a low voice, "Let's go out and have a look." The human immortals and fairy immortals of the 3 immortals walked out of the stone cave together. They stood on the mountainside of Mount Tianlong and looked down. What they saw was incredible. The 2 knowledgeable masters of thunder retribution were so scared that they sucked in a breath of cold air and turned pale. Chapter 927. It was early in the morning. The sun had just risen, and the sky was full of rosy clouds. It was the golden time for cultivation. At this time, most cultivators were meditating in their own cultivation rooms. Very few people would choose to go out at such a golden time. But at present, Mount Tianlong was densely packed with people. Some of them were standing on trees, their bodies swaying gently with the branches swaying in the wind. Some were standing in the jungle, their figures half hidden. Most of them were standing in the Taoist field at the foot of Mount Tianlong. Zhou Qin and Zi Yuan looked over and saw a dense crowd of people in the Taoist hall. Apart from people, there were only more people. Even when the 6 great sects had besieged the Fox Zen sect, there had not been so many people. Zhou Qin had returned from the Shang dynasty and could be considered a person who had seen a lot of big scenes. However, when she saw so many people gathered together, she was shocked. She couldn't help but exclaim, "How can there be so many people? I'm afraid there are tens of thousands of people here, right?" Zi Yuan looked at the foot of the mountain in shock and said in a low voice, "There should be. Why are there so many cultivators gathered together? Tens of thousands of cultivators gathered together." Such a thing was extremely rare in the history of the cultivation world of China and Japan. When tens of thousands of ordinary people gathered together, it would be a huge scene, not to mention that these tens of thousands of ordinary people were all ordinary people. Although the country monitored cultivators closely, the lowest cultivation quotient here was a top yang spirit master. If they wanted to kill a person, they might not be able to succeed 100% of the time. However, if they really wanted to go to a place, nothing could stop them. Zhou Qin's face darkened as she looked at the terrifying scene in front of her. An extremely ominous thought came to her mind. Could it be that they are all here to deal with Master? Zi Yuan hurriedly turned around and wanted to quickly walk into the stone room to warn Li Yundong. What she was most worried about had finally happened. Li Yundong's strength had reached an astonishing level. If he hadn't been so ostentatious, he would have been a legendary figure like Zhang Daoling, Wang Chongyang, and Zhang Sanfeng in the history of Chinese cultivation in the future, and his name would have been recorded in history. But he had fallen into the worst deadlock. Ever since Zi Yuan rescued Su Chan, who had fainted and revealed her true body in the Xingyuan Hotel in Tiannan City, she had been deeply worried. Zhou Qin didn't know the deeds of the mystical silver fox, but she, Zi Yuan, was the future leader of the Lingang sect. She knew all these secrets. Since ancient times, the only one who could cultivate all 9 foxtails into golden foxtails was the mystical silver fox with mystical luck. Su Chan's 2 foxtails had turned golden. This was definitely not a coincidence. But Zi Yuan knew this in her heart, but she didn't know how to tell him. She knew that even if she said it, he wouldn't change his love for Su Chan. And how could Li Yundong not know this? He definitely knew, he just didn't want to say it out loud. Zi Yuan's eyebrows were full of worry and fear. She rushed out a few steps, but soon stopped. Zhou Qin, who had followed her into the stone room, asked, "What's wrong?" Zi Yuan turned her face, sighed, and said softly, "Li Yundong is doing a ritual for Su Chan now. How can he have time to come out? Forget it, let's not disturb him. Here, let us deal with it." Zhou Qin was shocked. She thought to herself, there are tens of thousands of cultivators here. Can the 2 of us deal with them? But she saw that after Zi Yuan took a deep breath, the worry on her face gradually disappeared, replaced by calmness and indifference. She still looked like a calm fairy. Zhou Qin secretly admired Zi Yuan's willpower and cultivation. She thought to herself, haven't I been by Li Yundong's side all this time just for this moment? Why did you shrink back at such a critical moment? Zhou Qin made up her mind. She gritted her teeth and took a deep breath. The air in the early morning was icy cold. After taking a deep breath, Zhou Qin's whole body suddenly felt cold. She calmed down, and there was a trace of determination in her eyes. She nodded and said, "Well, I'll take the lead. Zi Yuan, you help me." As soon as she finished speaking, she heard a voice behind them. "Nonsense. Can the two of you fight against so many people? I'm afraid I can't do it either. Zhou Qin's body shook slightly. She looked back and saw that Li Yundong was looking at the two of them with his hands behind his back. Zhou Qin couldn't help but ask, Master, you? Zi Yuan also saw Li Yundong and asked doubtfully, you? Is your yang spirit out of your body? Li Yundong looked at Zi Yuan and nodded gently. He sighed and said, yes, if I don't come out, you two will do stupid things. Li Yundong slowly walked over to the two of them and said, Zhou Qin, you're not thinking of doing something stupid like risking your life to buy time for me, are you? Zhou Qin's childish thoughts were immediately seen through by Li Yundong. Her face turned red in an instant, and her ears were so red that they seemed to be dripping blood. She subconsciously turned her face away, but soon turned back and looked at Li Yundong stubbornly. If necessary, yes. Li Yundong sighed. He stretched out his hand and patted Zhou Qin's shoulder gently. With a complicated look in his eyes, he said, Zhou Qin. But have you ever thought about what I would do if something happened to you? Zhou Qin was stunned when she heard this. Her extremely beautiful eyes couldn't help but become misty. She slowly lowered her head and said in a low voice, Master, do you really have me in your heart? Li Yundong sighed and asked, do I not have you in my heart? When Zhou Qin heard this, she was stunned. She carefully pondered over the meaning of Li Yundong's words, and her mind was in a mess. What does Master mean by this? What does he mean by having me in his heart? It sounds a little ambiguous, but why can't I hear any other meaning when Master says it? Zhou Qin was so concerned that she let her imagination run wild for a moment. At this moment, she was a little dazed. Li Yundong looked at Zi Yuan and saw that she was also looking at him worriedly. When their eyes met, they seemed to understand each other's thoughts. Li Yundong nodded and said, don't worry, my real body is still casting spells to suppress the mystical silver fox in Su Chan's body. Zi Yuan was slightly relieved. She asked, what do you think we should do now? Li Yundong glanced around and saw that there were people everywhere at the foot of the mountain. He sighed softly and said with great emotion, why don't you two persuade me not to go against the cultivators of the world? Zi Yuan laughed. She pulled the hair by her ear and said softly, is it useful? Li Yundong glanced at her and also laughed. He said, we cultivators always say that we should be one with heaven and man, and we should use our own small universe to accommodate the universe of heaven and earth. But the world is so big that it can accommodate everything, but in fact, it is difficult for the world to accommodate some aliens. Li Yundong said with confidence and composure, each of us cultivators actually lives in our own spirit space. Everyone cultivates for different reasons, and everyone cultivates for different purposes. At this time, they united together and appeared in front of me. Some of them did it for their own interests, some for the interests of other sects, some were coerced to come together, and some came to take advantage of the situation. Li Yundong laughed, but there was no anger in his smile. It was as if he had seen through all kinds of life in the world in an instant, and he had seen through the hearts and true thoughts of these people. Li Yundong sighed softly and continued, each of them has their own purposes, but they have never thought about why I refuse to agree to their requests. Zi Yuan listened and was silent for a while, then said in a low voice, everyone's position is different, so of course the price is different. Li Yundong looked back at the stone room and saw that there was a burst of golden light coming from it. Around Su Chan, golden Sanskrit characters were lingering around her. Li Yundong's real body was still quickly pinching the Mahamudra and reciting the scriptures. Li Yundong smiled deeply and lovingly. He slowly shook his head, walked out of the stone cave, and appeared halfway up the mountain. As soon as he appeared, the gazes of everyone at the foot of the mountain all turned to look at him. The gazes of tens of thousands of cultivators were really pointing at him, and the pressure was unimaginable. If it had been an ordinary person, he would have collapsed and become a cripple at this moment. However, Li Yundong just took it as a breeze. He smiled slightly and said slowly, it's so lively, really lively. Li Yundong's gaze swept across the crowd and fell on Du Fei of the Chuanjin Dragon sect. He couldn't help but be stunned and said, "Jinren Du, you're here too?" Du Fei smiled bitterly. He sighed, saluted, and said, "Jinren Li, we meet again." Li Yundong smiled and glanced at the others around Du Fei. He saw that his old acquaintances, Wei Qing and Yu Sheng, were both next to him. When their eyes met his, they immediately lowered their heads and looked ashamed. It was obvious that they had been coerced to come here. In such a situation, they had no choice but to come. Otherwise, they would be blamed and reviled by thousands of people. Li Yundong nodded slightly and didn't make things difficult for them. His gaze quickly swept across the crowd. When he saw the other people of the Jingyi school, he didn't think too much about it. However, when he saw Wang Jinyuan, he was stunned for a moment. The corners of his mouth curled up, and an incomparably sarcastic smile appeared. "Master Wan, it's true that I can see you everywhere." Wang Jinyuan didn't seem to understand Li Yunyang's sarcasm. He smiled slightly, walked out of the crowd, and said in a clear voice, "Jinren Li, you are a great master and genius that has not been seen in the Chinese cultivation world for nearly 100 years. You originally had the hope of becoming a great master and leaving your name in history, but you wholeheartedly protected a fox demon. You went against the heaven and aroused public anger. I really feel sorry for you, Jinren Li." Hearing this, Li Yundong couldn't help but raise his head and laugh. "Those who know me say that I'm worried, and those who don't know me say that I don't want anything. Jinren Wan, according to what you said, I should thank you, right?" Wang Jinyuan saluted and said, "I don't dare. I hope that Jinren Li can stop before it's too late." At this time, Ise Xinguang of the Japanese cultivation world also came forward. He said loudly, "Wisdom King, we don't want to be enemies with you, but we are more afraid that the nightmare of the mystical silver fox will come again. I hope you can change your mind and kill the demons for the right way." Li Yundong glanced at him and asked calmly, "Xinguang, do you know who the person you want me to kill is?" Ise Xinguang was stunned for a moment. He knew that Su Chan was Li Yundong's lover, but he didn't know the details of Li Yundong and Su Chan's meeting and falling in love. Moreover, Japan was a society where men were superior to women. Women had a low social status and were often just accessories of men. Only a small number of strong women like Masako Tachibana and Ise Chuyun could get rid of such a low social status. But even so, in the thinking of these Japanese, cultivators should have a strong sense of self-sacrifice and dedication. When necessary, they could sacrifice themselves, let alone the women around them. Although Ise Xinguang was a wise man in the Japanese cultivation world, he also had his own thinking limitations. He immediately said anxiously, "Wisdom King, I know that there is a saying in your country that a man will never worry about not having a wife. There is also a saying that there are plenty of fish in the sea. Jinren Li, why do you have to go against all the cultivators in the world for a fox demon?" Li Yundong's smile was even more sarcastic. He said slowly, "A man will never worry about not having a wife? There are plenty of fish in the sea. Well said, but do you know that if it weren't for this fox demon that you disdain, I would still be an otaku that everyone looks down on, a loser who doesn't care about anyone? I'm afraid that the great genius and master in your eyes, who is rarely seen in 100 years, is still at home and has achieved nothing. When I was at my lowest, the fox demon that all of you said should be cut 1,000 times accompanied me when we were chased out of the place we lived. The two of us were homeless on the streets, but she followed me from beginning to end. She never left me, and she firmly believed that I would achieve great things in the future. When I was at my weakest, the fox demon you speak of, who should have been abandoned, taught me the art of cultivation. She made me understand that there was another mysterious world of cultivation in this world, and that there were such miraculous things. She gave me a goal in life, and gave me the motivation to forge ahead on the path of cultivation," Li Yundong said slowly. His voice was not very loud, but it clearly reached everyone's ears. There were hundreds of sects and tens of thousands of cultivators in the cultivation world of China. No one made a sound. It was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Only Li Yundong's voice echoed in the mountains. When I was at my lowest point, she was by my side to help me and support me. When I was at my lowest point, she still wanted to help me save money, fearing that I would be poor and hungry. Li Yundong glanced at the crowd and said slowly, now that I've achieved success and become a rare genius and master, do I have to go back and kill the girl who never left me? You're saying that I'm a genius and a great master? Li Yundong's eyes swept across the crowd and he said slowly, now that I've achieved success and become a great master, do I have to go back and kill this girl who never left me? Li Yundong's eyes slowly swept across the faces of the cultivators of the various sections. He said, tell me, if I do this, am I still a human? Everyone listened to Li Yundong's words. Although his tone was flat and his words were simple, they could all hear the infinite deep feelings in his tone. They were all silent, and no one answered Li Yundong's words. Li Yundong looked at all the people present, smiled, and said, not to mention that there are only 10,000 of you here today. Even if all the cultivators in the world come, even if all the gods and Buddhas of the Purple Cloud Palace come together, if they want to touch my girl, they will have to step over me first. Everyone's hearts trembled. Ise Shenguang raised his head and looked at Li Yundong in despair. He said loudly, Wisdom King, is there really no way to save it? Li Yundong didn't look at him anymore. He raised his head and said slowly, no matter what you say today, I only have one thing to say. Li Yundong's eyes instantly became extremely sharp. His voice was as sonorous as iron, and he said resolutely, if you have any means, bring it on. Well, it seems that it has been a while since I wrote a big chapter of about 450 words. Chapter 928. Li Yundong's words made the hearts of the cultivators on and off the mountain feel cold. They knew that a battle was inevitable. Li Yundong's reputation had risen over the past year. After several tough battles in a row, he had become famous all over the world. No one in the cultivation world didn't know him. Who would dare to challenge him? Li Yundong glanced at the crowd. Seeing that no one was talking, he said, don't you want to stop me? Who will go first? Or, all of you together? Li Yundong's voice shook the top of the mountain. Everyone was silent, and no one dared to take the initiative. What a joke. Who would dare to fight with the reincarnated Wisdom King? Were they tired of living? Fighting was different from other things. If there was a slight mistake, all the cultivation they had worked hard for over the years would be in vain. These people all knew that no matter how powerful Li Yundong was, it was impossible for him to defeat these tens of thousands of cultivation masters. However, it was absolutely impossible for these tens of thousands of cultivation masters to retreat unscathed. Therefore, no one was willing to be the cannon fodder in front of them. For a moment, there was complete silence on the mountain. Li Yundong couldn't help sneering and saying, since you don't want to come up and teach me, why don't you just leave together? But no one was willing to leave. Li Yundong saw that everyone was whispering to each other. They were all afraid of fighting, but they refused to leave. He couldn't help but say angrily, you don't want to fight, and you don't want to leave. What do you want? Li Yundong shouted, and there was a loud crack in the air. It was as if a bolt of thunder had pierced through everyone's ears, shaking their minds. At this time, Zhang Huashui of the Qingqing sect couldn't help but say to Zhang Tongtian, Xixiang, if you don't dare to go, I'll go. Zhang Tongtian quickly grabbed his hot-tempered Xixiang. He knew Zhang Huashui's temper. If he went up to challenge Li Yundong, he was afraid that he would fight with Li Yundong with his life. Judging from Li Yundong's situation, most of the people who fought with him did not have a good result. They were either dead or injured. Many people thought that the higher one's cultivation base was, the more they would be able to control themselves, but in reality, it was the opposite. The higher the cultivation of a person, the more dangerous and unpredictable it was. Because both sides had the possibility of defeating the other, they did not dare to be careless, let alone hold back. Although Zhang Huashui's cultivation was far lower than Li Yundong's, if he found a flaw and attacked Li Yundong's vital part, even a golden immortal would be defeated. Zhang Tongtian would never expect Li Yunyang to show mercy, so he immediately grabbed Zhang Huashui, glared at him, and shouted, "Are you the leader, or am I? Want to be in the limelight? We'll talk about it when you're in my position." Zhang Huashui's face immediately turned purple when he was scolded. However, when he saw Zhang Tongtian walk out, he suddenly realized that this was his senior brother's love for him. He was afraid that he would be impulsive and go out to ruin things. Zhang Tongtian walked out of the crowd. He stopped and flew up in an instant, not far from Li Yundong. He bowed and said, "I'm Zhang Tongtian, the leader of the Qingqing sect." "Nice to meet you, Zhenren Li." Li Yundong smiled slightly and said, "So it's you, Zhenren Zhang. How do you want to fight with me?" Zhang Tongtian shook his head and said, "Zhenren Li, I'm ashamed of my inferiority." Li Yundong said, "Oh? Zhenren Zhang, do you also want to persuade me to put righteousness before family? If so, I don't think you should waste your breath." Zhang Tongtian shook his head again and said, "No, I just want to ask Zhenren Li one thing. After I ask, our Qingqing sect will turn around and leave." Li Yundong asked curiously, "What is it?" Zhang Tongtian's eyes suddenly shot out 2 rays of lightning, and he stared straight at Li Yundong. He said slowly, "Zhenren Li, a few months ago, there was a murder on Mount Qingqing of our Qingqing sect. Dozens of disciples who were guarding the night in our sect were murdered. When I arrived at the scene that night, I found that there was already a river of blood on the spot, and the corpses had even been piled up like a tower. But what was even more unfortunate was that we sensed the fox demon's qi at the scene. Therefore, I would like to ask Zhenren Li, what is the relationship between your Fox Zen school and this murder?" Li Yundong was shocked. He hadn't expected that Zhang Tongtian would bring up this matter at this time. He said in a deep voice, "Zhenren Zhang, if I'm not wrong, it should have been done by Lu Yi, the former leader of the Fox Zen school. His purpose was to frame me." Zhang Tongtian's eyes narrowed, and then he asked, "Now that Lu Yi is dead, Zhenren Li, aren't you saying that there's no evidence?" Li Yundong said coldly, "Then what do you want to do, Zhenren Zhang?" Zhang Tongtian sighed softly. With a flick of his wrist, a 3-colored divine light suddenly flashed behind him, and a 3-foot-long sword appeared in his hand. The Sanhuang sword? The cultivators at the foot of the mountain were all stirred when they saw it. Even most of the cultivators in the Japanese cultivation world knew this peerless powerful magical weapon, which was ranked second among the 5 great divine swords of the Chinese Taoist cultivation world. Many of them had already seen the power of the immortal trapping sword of the 4 immortal killing swords. Just the immortal trapping sword of the 4 immortal killing swords had trapped the mystical silver fox. How powerful would the Sanhuang sword be? Although the Sanhuang sword had been taken from Zhang Cuni's hands by Xinxiu, the power of the powerful magical weapon depended on the user. Zhang Cuni's own cultivation was among the best of the younger generation, but compared with the top masters, he was far behind. Therefore, although this powerful magical weapon was powerful, the power and role it could play in his hands were extremely limited. However, if Zhang Tongtian was the one wielding this magic treasure, then it would be a completely different story. The Qingqing sect was a big sect in the middle of Sichuan, and it was one of the few big sects in the Taoist cultivation world. It had a deep foundation. Zhang Tongtian himself was also one of the famous masters of thunder retribution. He had been famous for a long time. He and the Sanhuang sword had already become one. If he used it, the power of the divine sword would definitely be earth-shattering. He might have the power to fight against Li Yundong. The cultivators of all sects had temporarily gathered together. Although they were putting pressure on Li Yundong, there were also many people who had come to join in the fun. If they could see such a top-level battle with their own eyes, it would even be better than 10 years of hard work in seclusion. Li Yundong saw the Sanhuang sword in Zhang Tongtian's hand. He smiled slightly and said, "Zhenren Zhang wants to fight with me with powerful magical weapons?" My powerful magical weapon is not with me. Why don't I fight with your powerful magical weapon with my bare hands? What do you think? When the crowd heard this, there was an uproar. They all knew that Li Yundong had already obtained the Dharmakaya of Wisdom King, but they didn't know how powerful he would be after obtaining it. Seeing that he was going to fight with Zhang Tongtian, who was holding the Sanhuang sword, with his bare hands, they were all shocked. It was like a duel between two sides. One side was empty-handed, while the other side was carrying a machine gun. How could they fight? Zhou Qin was also shocked when she heard this. She had already cultivated to the Thunder Retribution realm, and she was also a great master of the unity of heaven and man realm. Naturally, she could feel that the Sanhuang sword in Zhang Tongtian's hand was different. In Zhang Cuni's hand, the Sanhuang sword was just a sharp and powerful magical weapon. Anyone who touched it would break it. It could be called a magic weapon, but it might not have any magic power. But right now, in Zhang Tongtian's hand, the Sanhuang sword was flowing with a faint three-colored divine light. This divine light spread out in all directions. Two of them went straight into the ground, and the other went straight to the sky. It seemed to be continuously absorbing the three completely different powers of heaven, earth, and water. Zhou Qin knew that if any powerful magical weapon could continuously absorb power from heaven, earth, and water, it was equivalent to having an endless source of power. It could be said to be endless and have endless divine power. Seeing that Li Yundong wanted to compete with Zhang Tongtian, who had the Sanhuang sword, with his bare hands, she couldn't help but feel anxious. Just as she was about to step forward to speak, she was pulled back by Ziyuan. Zhou Qin turned her head and said anxiously, "Ziyuan, let go of him. Master is too careless. The Sanhuang sword is a magical sword that is as famous as the Xianyuan sword and the four fairy killing swords. How can he fight the enemy empty-handed?" However, Ziyuan shook her head. She gently pointed to the real body of Li Yundong, who was quickly forming Mahamudra and chanting Buddhist scriptures in the stone cave. She said, "No, Zhou Qin, Li Yundong doesn't really want to fight with them. This is just an open way." Zhou Qin's eyes lit up and she blurted out, secretly crossing Qinsong. Ziyuan nodded slightly and sighed softly. "I hope Li Yundong can hold on until Su Chan wakes up." Zhou Qin said worriedly, "I hope so." The two of them looked at Li Yundong again. At this time, at the foot of the mountain, a monk came to the side of Master Purin, the abbot of Shiyuan Temple. He bowed his head and said in a low voice, "Abbot, the monks of the Pure Land True sect, the Tiantai sect, and the Xinyan Tantrism are all in place. Should we?" The relationship between the Buddhist cultivation world of China and Japan was special. The Japanese Buddhist community had always believed that China was the mother country of Japanese Buddhism. Therefore, although the relationship between the two countries had ups and downs and was extremely sensitive, the relationship between the Buddhist communities of the two countries was quite close. The monks of the two countries were rarely hostile to each other. Therefore, when the monk mentioned the various sects of the Japanese cultivation world, his tone was quite friendly. Purin raised his head and looked at Li Yundong in the distance. He sighed and turned to look at the abbot of Jinshan Temple, only to see that the abbot of Jinshan Temple also nodded at him. Purin sighed and said, "Sure enough, this happened. When Li Yundong wanted to learn the demon-subduing formation and wanted to borrow the burning thumb pot, I was worried that something like this would happen, so I repeatedly asked him what he should do if he encountered such a thing. But I didn't expect." Purin sighed and shook his head. The gratitude and grudges of the world are all illusory. Jinrenli is possessed. Purin sighed with emotion. He turned his head and said to the monk, "Go and tell the monks that we are ready." The monk nodded and ran away quickly. After a while, a golden beam of light rose into the sky from the place where the Japanese Buddhist cultivation sects were gathered. A low chanting of Buddhist scriptures resounded in all directions, shaking the sky. Then, the eminent monks of Jinshan Temple, Shiyuan Temple, Mount Putua, Mount Wui, and other famous temples also sat down cross-legged, pinched their fingers, and chanted Buddhist scriptures. After a while, another beam of light rose into the sky, echoing with the previous beam of light. It rushed straight into the sky, as if it wanted to poke a hole in the sky. Li Yundong was shocked by the scene in front of him, but he immediately recognized that this was the 10,000 Buddhas worshipping formation specially created by Buddhist cultivators to prevent Buddhism from being destroyed by demons in the Dharma ending age. If it was in the Dharma ending era, when demons and evil paths were rampant and the Buddhist Dharma was no match for evil arts, the Buddhist cultivators could use this array to directly connect to the heaven realm and invite Buddha to descend to the mortal world to subdue the demons and devils. However, the requirements of this magic formation were too harsh, so even if Buddhism had suffered several disasters, it had not had the chance to be used. But Li Yundong hadn't expected that he would see the 10,000 Buddhas worshipping formation, which had never been successfully used, appear in front of him. Li Yundong was shocked and angry. He laughed angrily and said, "Well, it seems that you think of me as a devil." His body moved and he wanted to rush towards the Dharma formation. However, as soon as Li Yundong moved his mind, he saw a three-colored divine light pouncing toward him like a bolt of lightning without warning. Li Yundong's figure flashed and he immediately retreated. Li Yundong retreated at an extremely fast speed, leaving an afterimage in the air. The three-colored divine light instantly tore Li Yundong's afterimage into countless pieces. Li Yundong took a closer look and saw that Zhang Tongtian was holding the Sanhuang's sword and staring at him. He said slowly, "Zhenrenli, you can't have forgotten that your opponent is me, right?" Li Yundong's heart sank. He quickly glanced at the 10,000 Buddhas worshipping formation under his feet and then looked at Zhang Tongtian. He knew that he wanted to stall for time, but the other party was also stalling for time. But he didn't know who would be the one to die in the end. Chapter 929. In Dongwu City, there was still a group of people rushing to Mount Tianlong. "Yi. You. Come, hurry up, you good-for-nothings. Hurry up." Ding Nan ran quickly on the mountain road leading to Mount Tianlong. She walked as if she was flying, and her speed was amazing. She was like a strong and vigorous horse. Because of the battle in Nazuno, Ding Nan had violated the taboo of Chinese cultivators. Her Hell Wuzhang enchantment had become one of the most feared, powerful magical weapons of Chinese cultivators. No one was willing to get close to her, so no one had taken the initiative to tell her about the big event of Mount Tianlong. The Japanese cultivation world had seen with their own eyes that she and Li Yundong had a close relationship after the battle. The two of them had talked very secretly, so they were afraid that she would turn to Li Yundong at the last moment. Therefore, almost all the sects in the Chinese cultivation world and the Japanese cultivators had visited them, except for the Yin-Yang sect of Mount Wuhua, which was led by Ding Nan. But after all, there was no such thing as an impenetrable wall in the world. It was simply too difficult to hide something in the modern information society. Although Ding Nan was obsessed with the way of cultivation and could be said to be even crazier than Zhou Qin, she wished that she could break 24 hours into 48 hours every day. She spent all her time on the way of cultivation. Although she almost didn't care about the things around her, her disciples had sharp ears and eyes, so they eventually found out about it. Although she had learned the news a little late, Ding Nan had at least learned about it. Shocked and angry, this rising star of the Chinese cultivation world immediately set off for Mount Tianlong. At the beginning of the journey, Ding Nan was still putting on the airs of the leader, sitting on her exaggerated high chair. But after walking for a while, Ding Nan found that something was wrong. With their speed, it would take them 2 days to reach Dongwu City. By the time they reached the foot of Mount Tianlong, the mountain would have been empty. Ding Nan was also worried about Li Yundong's safety. She gritted her teeth, stamped her feet, and headed for Mount Tianlong. Although it was the time of the most abundant rain, there was no cloud in Dongwu City today. The sky was so clear that ordinary people seemed to be able to see through the sky and into space. At this time, Ding Nan did not dare to fly into the air rashly. Otherwise, it would not be a good thing if she was shot down. Therefore, she sprinted all the way, her legs constantly stepping on the ground like a motor. Her cultivation was already at the golden body level. Not only did her speed not decrease along the way, but it also increased her speed. You almost there. The disciples of the Yin-Yang faction in Mount Wuhua were all people whose inner cores and true qi were not condensed. Although running looked simple, it was a test of whether one's breath was long and condensed. Along the way, almost all the disciples of the Yin-Yang faction fell behind, including Song Guohua. Only Zhao Jing, who had a South American style and had her body transformed by the Dun Jin Dan, was struggling to support Ding Nan. The brown-haired beauty ran so fast that she couldn't see clearly, but she still couldn't keep up with Ding Nan. If she took a break at this time, she would definitely be able to escape from Ding Nan. Ding Nan was busy going to Mount Tianlong, so she definitely did not have the energy or time to catch her. However, Zhao Jing had been with Ding Nan for a long time these days, and she had gradually been attracted by the mysterious cultivation techniques. Although Ding Nan was usually harsh to people, she was not as cold and ruthless as Zheng Yuan. At least, she was still a little human. Therefore, Zhao Jing's fear at the beginning had slowly turned into curiosity and yearning. Now, she was deeply immersed in it and could no longer extricate herself. Zhao Jing ran behind Ding Nan for a while. Just as she was about to run out of steam, she suddenly found that Ding Nan had suddenly stopped in front of her. Zhao Jing was stunned and stopped as well. She opened her mouth and asked in a rather awkward Chinese language, "Master, what's wrong?" The longer Zhao Jing had been in China these days, the more she had learned the Chinese language. At least she could barely communicate with others. As soon as she asked this question, Ding Nan raised her hand to signal her not to speak. Although Dongwu City's economic development had been extremely rapid after the reform and opening up, and it was one of the second-tier cities in the country, Mount Tianlong was located in a remote suburb surrounded by barren mountains. Therefore, if Ding Nan and Zhao Jing were killed by a sneak attack, no one would be able to find them even after hundreds of years. Ding Nan looked around vigilantly. Her eyes swept around like lightning, and she suddenly said in a loud voice, "Which Taoist friend is here? Why don't you show yourself?" Zhao Jing also widened her eyes and looked around. She saw that although it was not deep in the mountains and forests, there were lush trees and strange rocks everywhere. It was really an extremely remote wilderness. Not to mention people, not even a ghost could be seen. They were almost there. Zhao Jing couldn't help but ask, "Master, there's not even a bird here. How can there be people?" Ding Nan sneered and said, "You're right. How can there be no birds in this wilderness? So, don't hide anymore. Don't try to fool me with such a low-grade illusory formation." As soon as Ding Nan's voice fell, 3 figures suddenly appeared around them. The 2 in front were dressed in kimonos, and the one in front was Abe Naomi, the young master of the Abe family. He was considered one of the top masters among the younger generation of the Japanese cultivation world, and he was proficient in all kinds of yin-yang illusions. Therefore, he had been transferred to guard around Mount Tianlong, using the illusion formation to block mortals from entering this place, and to prevent anything about Mount Tianlong from getting out. Abe Naomi had seen Ding Nan before. He was quite vigilant and spoke in Japanese. Tachibana Wakako was next to him. She translated his words to Ding Nan. "What are you doing here? Now Mount Tianlong has been sealed, and you can't go in and out at will." Hearing this, Ding Nan was furious and shouted, "T, this is China, not Japan. If I want to come here, do I need to ask you Japanese for your opinion?" Abe Naomi and Tachibana Wakako were stunned when they heard this. They turned to look at the person next to them, who was dressed in a Taoist robe. He was a young disciple of the Zhengyi school. The disciple said to Ding Nan, "Leader Ding, now Mount Tianlong has been sealed by the cultivation world of China and Japan. You can't go up there." Ding Nan was furious. She took a step forward and said sternly, "Why can your sects go up the mountain, but the Yin-Yang sect of Mount Wuhua can't?" At this time, Zhao Jing also chimed in, "That's right, you don't have the right to do this." The disciple of the Zhini school looked embarrassed. He wanted to speak again, but Ding Nan had already stepped forward. He quickly stood in front of her and said, "Leader Ding, you." Ding Nan didn't wait for him to finish. She raised her arm, picked him up like a little spirit, and threw him out. Abe Naomi and Tachibana Wakako were shocked. Just as they were about to step forward, Ding Nan turned her head and glared at them. "If you're not afraid of death, try to stop me." Ding Nan's cultivation was getting higher and higher. Moreover, she had experienced several battles, so her bearing and spirit had slowly been honed. She now had the demeanor of a great cultivator. Her words were really amazing, making Abe Naomi and Tachibana Wakako feel like they were being robbed. For a moment, neither of them dared to step forward to stop her. Ding Nan snorted angrily, turned around, and stretched out her hands. Suddenly, ripples appeared where her fingers had pierced. She shouted and pulled hard to both sides, tearing a gap in front of her. As soon as the gap was torn open, there was a burst of dazzling divine light coming from inside, followed by a burst of deafening roars and chanting of Buddhist scriptures. Zhao Jing looked inside and saw 9 golden pillars of light rising from several directions at the foot of Mount Tianlong. There were 9 colored clouds rolling in the sky, and colorful ripples spread in all directions. However, when they spread in front of them, they were blocked by the magic formation and scattered into colorful dust, like falling cherry blossoms, dazzling people. Abe Naomi, Tachibana Wakako, and the others had been sent to guard the periphery, so they had some thoughts in their hearts. After all, who didn't want to see the strongest battle in the cultivation world? When the two of them saw that Ding Nan had forcibly broken the magic formation, they couldn't help but look inside. It would have been better if they hadn't seen it, but as soon as they saw it, they couldn't take their eyes off it. They saw an immovable wisdom king with 3 heads and 6 arms sitting on the mountainside of Mount Tianlong. It was the incarnation of Li Yundong's yang spirit. The 6 arms of this wisdom king were constantly pinching the mantra Mahamudra. In front of him was a middle-aged Taoist in a Taoist robe. This Taoist was holding a sword surrounded by green, yellow, and black. The 3 divine lights on this sword were constantly absorbing power from the heaven, earth, and water. As soon as he lifted it, the sky and earth shook, and the wind and clouds surged. The momentum was so great that it seemed that the sky was about to collapse and the earth was about to crack. The Taoist waved his hand, and the Sanhuang sword fell toward Li Yundong. The divine sword cut through the sky, leaving a long 3-colored shadow, as if it had cut the sky into 2 pieces. Ding Nan was shocked when she saw it. She had seen the Sanhuang sword before. At the Taoist assembly, the Sanhuang sword had been taken away by Shinsu, which made her look down on this legendary divine sword. But now, in the hands of this middle-aged Taoist, this divine sword was terrifyingly powerful. With a raise of his hand, it really had the power to change the world. Ding Nan did not dare to imagine how she would defend herself if the Taoist priest slashed at her with his sword. In fact, whether it was a Taoist or Buddhist cultivation magic weapon, the more powerful the magic weapon was, the more ingenious it was. The magical effect of Ding Nan's Hell 5 Zhang's soul hook was extremely simple. She just had to call out the other party's name, and then the ghosts of the Hell 5 Zhang's soul hook would come out and pull the other party's soul into it. Then, there would be no more tricks, not even the slightest bit of tricks. The Sanhuang sword was also raised and then slashed. It was a simple and ordinary action, but its power was so great that people didn't dare to look directly at it. The Qinqing sect had been established for thousands of years, and it was still standing today because of the Sanhuang sword, the most powerful magic weapon of the sect. The Xianyuan sword had long been lost, and the 4 fairy-killing swords had completely disappeared. Therefore, in fact, the most powerful ancient sword in the cultivation world was the Sanhuang sword. At this time, Abe Naomi and Tachibana Wakako also couldn't help standing in front of the crack. They widened their eyes and looked inside. Even the Taoist who had been thrown out by Ding Nan had forgotten what had happened before and looked at the situation inside with his mouth agape. They only saw the power of this sword. Although the world was big, no one could match it. And the immovable Wisdom King was known to frighten all demons and evil spirits and sweep away all evil obstacles. The strongest divine sword in the Chinese cultivation world collided with the immovable Wisdom King, the king of all wisdom kings and the king of all wisdom kings, but no one knew who would win. As soon as this thought came to their minds, they saw Li Yundong holding the Mahamudra, holding the glittering golden Mahamudra and facing the Sanhuang sword. The aura of the golden Mahamudra in the air was condensed and vigorous, as if it were real. Even though Ding Nan and the others were very far away, they felt that the Mahamudra was like a strict golden pagoda wall, unshakable. Seeing that the Mahamudra and the Sanhuang sword were getting closer and closer, they were so nervous that they didn't dare to breathe. Suddenly, as soon as the Mahamudra touched the Sanhuang sword, the golden Mahamudra immediately collapsed. The Sanhuang sword cut down like a hot knife through butter, smashing several Mahamudra in succession, chopping down on the head of Li Yundong's yang spirit. Ding Nan was shocked when she saw this. She rushed in without hesitation. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.